stamps to collectors, and he invested wisely in the stock market, and he helped form a charitable organization that helps fund this annual award. And he's done, along with that charitable organization, a lot of positive things for Acton over the years. Mr. Lally represented hard work, perseverance, and dedication, and those are traits I look for when I make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen for these awards. So the recipient of the Joseph Lally Municipal Employee of the Year Award for 2018 is Karen Switzer-Neff of the Highway Department. Karen has always demonstrated to me that she is an extremely dedicated, hardworking individual, and she takes great pride in her job. She's not only an asset to the Department of Public Works, but she's an asset to other town departments as well, as many of the public seek her help. She's well organized and has many years of service to the town, and she assists staff and is very familiar with budgetary and administrative needs. She has volunteered to work with other departments and has helped us with interviewing applicants and other things, such as testing new processes for our Munis software system that really is the driving train for our financial department. And she's very influential in organizing events as a member of our Employee Recognition Committee. She began working back in 1995 in the planning and engineering departments in a shared role as administrative assistant. Then Dave Brown, the former highway superintendent, hired her in the highway department in 2004, and she was promoted to office manager of the highway department in 2013. Her commitment and work efforts have made the transition from Dave Brown to Russell Robertson to now to Dickie Waite as a highway superintendent, and made those transitions very smooth for both the department and the town. It certainly became clear to me over my time in Acton that Karen plays a key role in keeping the department moving forward. Without question, the president and former highway superintendents have relied heavily on her for budget preparation, reporting requirements, state and federal storm reimbursements, and generally keeping the highway department running smoothly. So I'd like to ask Karen to come up here and receive her award. Congratulations, Karen.
Thank you so much. All right, well, thank you, Dick, Corey, for feeling I deserve this honor. I love my job, and thank you, Roland Bartle, for hiring me 24 years ago. Appreciate it.
Public Safety Employee of the Year for 2018 is Captain EMT Scott Morse of the Fire Department. Scott's been involved with the fire service for 30 years, coming from the town of Boxborough and joining us in August of 1988. His love for the fire service was instilled in him at a young age, as his father, Warren Morse, was one of Boxborough's first firefighters and served as chief in Boxborough from 1973 to 1985. Scott became an EMT in 1986, obtained his commercial driver's license also in 1986, and graduated from the Mass Firefighting Academy basic recruit training in November of 1988. He has continued his education by obtaining certifications in Fire Officer 1 and 2, Fire Instructor 1 and 2, as well as many other training courses through the Mass Firefighting Academy. Scott, in turn, has served as an inspiration for his nephew, who has recently become a firefighter. The positive attitude and sense of humor that Scott brings to the work every day goes a long way in making the fire department a better place. In the early stages of his career, he kept the department current in CPR and assisted the Emergency Medical Services Coordinator. Now his leadership as shift commander has helped the department launch the Advanced Life Support Service for the town, and as well as mentoring young officers, preparing them to lead in future years. His commitment to training, growing, and sharing his experiences with others helped to expand the knowledge and effectiveness of his co-workers. His vast capabilities in mechanics and building construction are an invaluable resource for the town, as well as his ability to determine what is going on and formulate a sound solution to most problems quickly and efficiently, which is a very unique skill in today's world. Scott further helps the department by currently serving on the apparatus procurement division along with assisting the fleet maintenance coordinator. The attention to detail he brings to the table while specifying, ordering, taking delivery of equipment is a great value, ensuring the process is as seamless as possible. And a couple of years ago, I did have the opportunity, as we had to deal with a difficult situation on School Street, and Scott was the captain in charge, and I was just incredibly impressed at how he handled that situation. So, Scott, if you would, come up and receive your award.
Thank you very much. I forgot I did all those things. Must be getting close for retirement. But thank you all for being here. Thank the fire department. Thank the management of the town for giving me 30 wonderful years. Thank you very much.
I will now recognize the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Ms. Adachi.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Our colleague Ching-Sung Chang decided not to run for a second term this year and will be stepping down from the Board of Selectmen when this 2018 annual town meeting dissolves. In 2015, we on the board heard by a word of mouth that he was running and look forward to meeting him. That proved challenging at first because when he started attending our meetings, he would take off as soon as we adjourned. But we had a solution. One evening, he entered room 204 just before our meeting was to start, and we beckoned to him to come chat with us. Trapped. He turned out to be a genial fellow with a good laugh. Just months after he joined the board, the town of Concord filed its application for the Nagog Pond Water Treatment Project, and during most of Mr. Chang's term, the board seems to have talked about little else. But Mr. Chang has been an enthusiastic participant in Nagog Pond discussions and has shared some astute observations. The 3 years certainly have gone quickly. Thank you, Ching-Sung, for your service on the board and to the town, and our very best wishes.
Okay, I guess we are now ready to take up where we left off last evening, which is at Article 9. This is the Kelly's Corner Improvement Initiative. Mr. Barry moves that the town appropriate $484,000 to be expended by the town manager for the purposes set forth in the article, including costs incidental and related thereto, and to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, is authorized to borrow $469,000 under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 7, as amended, and transfer from free cash $15,000 for the payment of interest and underwriting costs on such borrowing, and further that any premium received upon the sale of the bonds, less the cost of preparing, issuing, and marketing them, and any accrued interest received upon the delivery of the bonds may be applied to the costs of the project and to reduce the amount authorized to be borrowed for the project by like amount. Do I have a second? The motion has been made and seconded. As you can tell from the motion, this involves borrowing, and so will require a 2/3 majority to pass. Mr. Barry, are you speaking to your motion?
Mr. Brockway is going to speak to the motion. The selectmen voted to recommend this article.
Thank you. Mr. Brockway, by prior agreement, I believe we agreed you would have 12 minutes for your presentation. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Yes. Yes, please set the timer to 12 minutes. No? No, that's not going to work. Mr. Brockway doesn't talk that fast. Please set it to 12 minutes. Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. I'm Andrew Brockway. I'm chair of the steering committee for the Kelly's Corner Improvement Initiative. And with me tonight along in the committee is Larry Kanaa, who also represents the Economic Development Committee, Peter Darlow, who represents Design Review Board, again, Peter Berry is selectman, Aaron Betez, who's a general public representative, and on the Finance Committee is John Benson, who's also been working with us. So.
Doesn't seem to be working, does it?
Hey.
There we go.
All right. Yeah. As you know, the town has long sought to improve the conditions within Kelly's Corner and ideally to make it a truly functioning town center. Although there have been multiple traffic and design studies conducted over the years, none have led to tangible results. This time is different. The current design effort is on track to be completed, approved by the authorities, and ultimately funded and constructed. There are multiple issues confronting Kelly's Corner, and specifically this plan will increase safety, greatly reduce and control traffic congestion, provide equal access for pedestrians, bicyclists, and those with disabilities, and will begin to establish a coherent and recognizable identity for Kelly's Corner. So this is an overall map of the area. The scope of work will run on Route 27 just south of Kmart up to just short of the Route 2 interchange. On Route 111, it will run from just west of the tennis court to the school to just below the Roach Brothers parking lot. At each entrance into Kelly's Corner, there will be landscape islands that will indicate that you are entering into a defined area and will effectively encourage you to slow down. There will be 4 total traffic lights, an improved one at the Route 111-27 intersection, one at the top of Community Lane, which is the cut-through road at Roach Brothers, one at the CVS intersection, which has come about in part from previous public input, and one here at Charter Road at the entrance to the school, and this will also include the realignment at the entrance to the school. These lights will be synchronized and coordinated to provide more efficient movement throughout Kelly's Corner. There will be added turning lanes, and in some locations to help with traffic management, there will be a series of bike lanes and so-called bike boxes to provide safer use of the roads. There will be improvements to the hardscape, including ADA accessible sidewalks, and to the landscape, including the planting of additional trees, although some existing trees will be removed. There are 2 important factors that govern both the process and the product. Route 111 Mass Ave is a state-controlled road. Conversely, Route 27 Main Street is a town-controlled road. Any work within the Route 111 corridor is subject to the Mass Department of Transportation requirements and standards. The second factor is that the construction funding for the project will be provided by both the state and the federal government and administered by the Metropolitan Planning Organization. This means that the entire project, including Route 27, will be subject to the Mass Department of Transportation requirements, as the Mass DOT is the principal reviewing agency. So I'm going to briefly show you 2 of the revised intersections. This is a plan of the revised Route 111, Route 27 intersection. And I apologize for the difficulty in reading the slides, but unfortunately we're working with the drawings available to us. So, coming north on 27, there will be a longer defined left-hand turn lane signalized with the light. There will be a through lane as well as a combined through lane, right-hand turn lane, and there will be a bike lane and a so-called bike box at the head of the intersection to allow bicyclists to safely stop and start. Both sides of all roads coming into and leaving the intersection will have new dedicated bike lanes. Coming south on Route 27, there will be a through lane and a right-hand turn lane, but the left-hand turn lane will be eliminated as cars will be directed to turn left at the new community lane light. As it is now, very few cars actually make that left-hand turn. So coming from the west to the east on Route 111 from the school to the intersection 27, there will be an added left-hand turn lane to accommodate the current traffic that backs up the hill. So this is the entrance to Charter Road, where we are now. It will be moved to the west, farther away from the crest of the hill, to allow for greater line of sight from cars approaching from the main intersection. There will be a new light added. There will now be a right-hand turn lane out of Charter Road as well as a through lane. On Route 111 eastbound, there will be an added left-hand turn lane into the school as well as a through lane. All these changes working together will greatly reduce the extended wait times, general chaos, and unsafe conditions at this intersection. There will also be a new public transit bus stop adjacent to the tennis courts. These images represent conceptual improvements to the landscape hardscape. Some elements are new accessible sidewalks, new public space for gathering, new lighting, new benches, and the addition of a tree-lined landscape and hardscape. Some areas will be more formal in their overall appearance, other areas will be more quote-unquote natural. As the design progresses, the particulars of the landscape hardscape will be further developed. Many people have asked if the new plan will have enough capacity if the Kmart property or other properties redevelop. Conversely, they have wondered what effects will new technologies such as smart cars or the change to working lifestyles have on the design. The plan does take into account future development, including Kmart, and is designed to accommodate whatever additional volume of cars is added into the system by these developments. The reality is that Kmart and or other developments would account for relatively little traffic within the overall system, although there would be some impact at those specific sites. The impact of new technologies is inconclusive. For example, based on a number of studies, it is not clear that smart cars will actually reduce congestion. Regardless of these potential future variables, the physical design of the plan would not need to significantly change. The problems we have are current, significant, and require substantial coordinated design effort now to alleviate them. This slide looks out 20 years in the future and gives some representative examples of the increase or decrease in calculated wait times, with the numbers you see on the screen being the added or reduced time in seconds compared to today, both with and without the infrastructure improvements. Not all intersections will show drastic improvement, but it is fair to say that there will be significant improvement in many locations and that the overall system will reduce wait and travel time. In order to accommodate the added bike lanes, turning lanes, and sidewalks, the right-of-way will be increased along sections of the project. Some of the expansion will be relatively small. Some may be small in terms of square feet, but may require, for example, new retaining walls be created to accommodate the change in grading. And some expansion may be large in square feet, but could have minor impact on the property owner. Conversely, other expansion could be relatively small, but have serious impact on the property owner. The responsibility for the appraisals and the cost of either acquiring these parcels or gaining the easements is divided between the state and the town, with the basic division being that the state is responsible for those parcels along the Route 111 corridor, and the town is responsible for the Route 27 corridor and the community lane parcel at Roach Brothers. I think it's important to note about one property in particular, Bueno Usano, at the corner of Route 111 and 27, will lose parking spaces when this plan is put into effect. There's a question as to what the economic impact will be to the property, and ultimately there may be a question as to whether or not the reduced parking will cause the property to be deemed economically non-viable, and the entire property would have to be taken. That determination will be made by the required appraisals. The cost of this potential acquisition will be covered by the state, not the town, as the property abuts Route 111. Having said that, I want to make everyone aware that the current property owner is a longtime resident of the town, and I think it is important that we as a town collectively support efforts to find some additional parking that can be legally attached and beneficially used for this property so that it remains economically viable. What the form and the cost of that effort might be is unclear, but we shouldn't lose sight of this issue and that their fellow citizens are impacted by this project. There are two basic types of costs related to the project: the construction or hard costs of approximately $14.5 million and the so-called soft costs related to design, appraisals, and acquisitions and easements. The state and federal funding will cover the construction costs. The town is responsible for the soft costs. At April 2016 town meeting, you approved a total of $756,000 in design fees to complete the project. and that money was split between the 25% Mass Department of Transportation design phase and the final design phase. The project has reached and recently submitted to Mass DOT the documents for the 25% required review. In Article 9 tonight, we're requesting an additional $144,000 in supplemental engineering fees. The majority of the additional requests are related to the redesign of the Charter Road entrance, while other fees are related to the added light at CVS, as well as working with the Acton Historical Society to reduce the impact on the Hosmer House, and working with individual property owners to better accommodate their particular situations. We're asking for $125,000 for the appraisal fees. The appraisals in the process are controlled by federal standards, as we are using federal money to construct the project. There is an initial appraisal required, and then a subsequent peer review appraisal is required. Per federal standards, the appraisals cannot begin until additional design work is completed, but without the appraisals, the project cannot move forward to final completion. There's a sizable contingency request of $200,000 that's made out of an abundance of caution. At this point, the basic design is well established, the existing physical conditions and project limits are well known, and the planning department and the engineering consultants have kept the regional Mass DOT in the loop. So the 25% submission will not come as a grand surprise to Mass DOT. To date, we have requested $756,000 in design fees. Tonight, we are requesting an additional $469,000 in project costs, including the $200,000 contingency. The total for the project to date is $1,225,000 with the contingency. The acquisition costs are unknown at this time. That is what the appraisals are for, but they likely would be a real cost to the town. There will be a formal public hearing in town conducted by the Mass Department of Transportation, perhaps this June or July. The public will have an opportunity to review the plans and comment on them ahead of time, as well as at the hearing. I encourage everyone to forward any concerns or comments to the engineers and Mass DOT as part of this review process. It is anticipated that the formal approval from DOT to move forward with the project will be made this fall. It is also anticipated that at April 2019 town meeting, you will be asked to vote on whether or not to give the selectmen the power to authorize any acquisitions. You are not doing that tonight. You are simply voting tonight on whether or not to fund the appraisals. The design should be completed in 2020, and the project should be out to bid after additional reviews and coordination sometime late 2021, which would keep us on the funding schedule. So it's a big project. It's a complicated project, but we're on track to get it done. The town has been at this for many years, but now there's a concrete plan with a concrete timeline to have it come to fruition. If we ultimately reject moving forward, the underlying problems will not go away, and we simply do not have the resources on our own to make any tangible, lasting improvements. So I urge you to vote yes on Article 9. Please remember that it takes 2/3 approval for passage of this article, as these funds will be bonded. And just to be clear, this article does not have anything to do with zoning in Kelly's Corner. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Brockway. Do the Board of Selectmen have a recommendation?
Mr. Moderator, the Board of Selectmen recommended that town meeting approve this article.
Thank you, and the Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee supports the article.
Thank you. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
Mr. Moderator, I would like to move to divide this article to consider the two parts separately.
Is there a second to that motion? Second. There is a second. Would you like to address why you would like to divide the question and how?
Why I can do, I don't know about how, I may need your help on that.
Well, I mean, I assume that you're looking to divide it into 2 or more pieces.
Well, I said two. The two, as shown in the warrant, the $344,000 cost of the supplemental design and the $125,000 appraisal cost, those are the two pieces. I think they're obviously related because they both have to do with Kelly's Corner, but there may be totally different reasons to vote for or against each one of those, which we will discuss when the time comes. I think it'll be clearer and simpler to discuss them separately because they have different priorities in my mind, and that's why I'm making the motion.
Okay, thank you. So we're into some parliamentary process that we're not necessarily as town meeting members that familiar with, but really in effect what the speaker is requesting is essentially we treat this similar to the way we do, for example, the Community Preservation Committee articles where we go through sequentially. This would simply divide the question and actually would divide the vote between the two sums of money that are shown in the warrant, the $344,000 for the engineering service and the $125,000 for the appraisal services. The way we will proceed with this, since the motion to divide the question has been made and seconded, it is a question that is debatable, so we will have debate, and then it requires a majority vote to approve the question to be divided into two.
If I may, one quick additional comment. The motion says that these will be bonded. The $125,000, should that be the only remaining part of the motion, can still be bonded because, as was explained last night, that would be bonded together with Article 8, which has already passed. So it would not create an excessive cost of bonding. I just want to make that point.
Okay. So the motion has been made and seconded. I will open the question as to whether to divide the question into two up for debate. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Yes, Alan Nitchelm. I guess my question was whether both sections need a 2/3 vote or whether the selectmen would prefer that either of those items not get bonded and then it wouldn't need a 2/3 vote.
The way the motion's currently written, I believe, would require 2/3 for both sections.
Okay, thanks.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 4. Number 4, please.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Moderator. Catherine
you.
Black, Central Street. I frankly don't see the point of dividing this. The article, the two sections of money are intimately related and should be voted on together. That's all.
Thank you. Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
I agree with the previous speaker, so I have nothing more to add.
Thank you. Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Tara Fredericks, I am in favor of much of the engineering services to help with the Hosmer House and work out details of a much better design, which I'll speak on when we get to the actual article. But I feel like it's early for appraisal services. I feel like we have to work more on getting a sustainable design that doesn't impact local businesses as much and doesn't take down these old grandma trees and eliminates the extra turning lanes, which I think adds risk for children and people crossing the streets. So I'm in favor of splitting them. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
Yes, I wanted to also make a motion to amend this article. So before this goes out...
Excuse me, there's
yes.
a point of order.
We're discussing a particular thing, and I think it's premature to try and amend anything else.
I was about to say that we don't normally take amendments to amendments, which is, I think, what might have been proposed. What we will do is we will debate this question first. If the question is then divided, then if you wish to make an amendment, that would be the appropriate time to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
You're welcome. Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Lauren Rosenzweig Morton, 26 Marshall Path. I agree with the two previous people that want to keep it together, but I wanted to ask Mr. Brockway, what are some of the risks if we separate this article and one gets voted up, one gets voted down?
Mr. Brockway.
So my understanding is that we would need to reach the 75% design phase in order to even start the appraisals. So even if tonight you approve the funding for the appraisals would not start until we reach that 75 design phase. So.
Can I ask a follow-up question, Mr.
Yes,
Moderator?
you may.
So that would extend the safety and all those benefits and federal funding out several more years? Is that what you're saying?
Mr. Brockway?
So my understanding is that we have approximately 6 months. We could delay the appraisal, sort of approving it, getting the process going, approximately 6 months. So for argument's sake, this fall town meeting. The way the funding for the TIP, which is the federal funding, works is that you get on the so-called TIP, which is the Transportation Improvement Program, and it's a 5-year phase. And so we were accepted into that program in 2017, which means they expect us to spend the funds in 2022. If we're not ready in 2022, it's possible that we could be put back 1 year only, but it could be also possible that we slide several years because those slots are being filled in subsequent years. So we have plus or minus until fall town meeting to stay on the anticipated schedule.
Okay, thank you very much.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Hello, Madeline Harvey, 5 Quail Run. I simply have a question. You've mentioned the addition of several signals. I think that's a great idea. Are those going to be APS signals, which I think stands for accessible pedestrian signals, better known to us as the chirping ones? Because there are a lot of people in that area, I know several who are visually impaired, hearing impaired, have disabilities, and have a lot of difficulty negotiating those signals. So I just would like that to be looked into.
Mr. Brockway, I would suggest that we try to keep our comments and questions just to the motion that is before us.
Okay. So,
but you may answer that question while it's on.
Okay. So just briefly, I don't know absolutely that's true, but these signals will be the latest technology. Undoubtedly, they will sort of have both sound, sort of signalization, chirping, whatever. They all, and I mean, I can get into more signalization later, but.
And the speaker at microphone number 1.
Hi, Tara Fredericks, West Acton. I just, point of information, I spent about an hour on the phone with somebody on the team that programs the TIP funding schedule and the program funds at the state, and they said that they often have delays and push out projects a year or more to accommodate local needs. Thank you.
Seeing no one else standing, we will vote on the motion that is currently before us, which is to divide the question essentially in 2 pieces that would then take a vote for 2 pieces. All those in favor of the motion to divide the question, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Nay. The motion loses. So we are now back to the main motion, and I believe there was someone who wanted to make an amendment to the main motion that is before us. And I recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
Hi, Chris Starr, 6 Littlefield Road, Acton. I'd like to make the motion to amend Article 9 by adding the following language. The town shall make the best efforts to minimize and mitigate the negative impacts of property takings related to Kelly's Corner infrastructure project on local landowners and small businesses. To this end, the town shall work diligently with the affected local landowners and local small businesses to develop and evaluate alternatives to the project design. A reasonable amount of the project contingency fund shall be allocated to fund said cooperation between the town and the affected parties.
Is there a second to the amendment? The motion is the motion to make an amendment has been made and seconded. Sir, you have 4 minutes if you would like to speak to your amendment.
Sure. I just wanted to say that myself and a partner of mine, Chris Bailey, own 263 Main Street, which is the home of Bueno Isano, which has been really a great addition to the Acton community. Jason has put his heart and soul into this business, as Chris and I have into the property. And we've worked very carefully and diligently with the town to work on issues of traffic planning and the like. I want to just appeal to people's, good people of Acton's sense of fairness, because I think that it's important for businesses who are trying to make a go of it and trying to locate here in Acton to be supported, and I think we owe it to them to give them our support. And the takings plan that comes out of the Kelly's Corner initiative would literally destroy Bueno Estano and also severely injure a number of other businesses in Kelly's Corner. So this is the reason why I'm proposing this motion, is to basically interject the concept of fairness and to really look at the design of this. I think that, everybody wants to see a beautiful Kelly's Corner, but also we don't want to destroy businesses at the same time. And so Andy's point earlier, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to use names, but to the presentation earlier, it's not just about finding a number or appraising the value of this property. It's about keeping people's dreams alive. And Jason Brady and his family have worked really hard to build a business there. And so it's not just about giving somebody a check, but to give them a chance. And I think that if we work together, that we can find solutions on design for traffic engineering that wouldn't have the same level of impact. So anyway, I truly appreciate everybody's time and consideration, and hope that you feel likewise and support me on this amendment of Article 9.
Can we have the amendment up on the screen, please, since that's what we will be debating? Thank you. I need to, now that town council is here, I need to have a brief word with her before we continue. I'm going to ask for recommendations from the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee, so that if they don't have them already, they might want to caucus while I speak with council for a minute. Mr. Berry, has the Board of Selectmen reached a decision about this amendment?
Yes, we have, Mr. Moderator. Thank you. The Board of Selectmen recommended this amendment to town meeting.
And the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee recommends the amendment.
Okay. I will now open it up for debate. We are debating only the amendment at this point, and then we will take a vote on the amendment. And just so everyone is aware, the amendment itself requires only a majority vote. We will then go back, depending on the outcome of the vote on the amendment, we will go back to the main motion, which will require a 2/3. So I recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Alan Nitchelm again. So I had a question, I guess, to the presenter, since he's up there. So when I listened to your presentation, and I haven't been following this issue, you said that obviously you're very mindful of the impact that this is going to have on businesses, and you were going to work with the businesses. Then when the amender came up, he basically said the same thing. He wants you to be very mindful of the businesses, especially Bueno y Sano, which doesn't have much parking. And then he used in his amendment the curious phrase that he wanted to fund cooperation. And I guess I don't really understand what that means from the contingency. So you're going to be working with the businesses. Do you think you're going to require spending money in order to work this out other than taking the land? I mean, I'm just confused as to why this motion, this amendment has anything to do with money.
Mr. Brockway, do you want to try to answer that, or we could also get the, do you want to try to answer that? Yeah.
So I think there might be two aspects. So one would be that we'd have to go back and sort of, look at the initial design that's now in submission at 25%, and see whether or not we can shift the roadway alignment here and there. That's been done once, but, again, because given the seriousness of the impact here, that, we should be willing to sort of, again, work and see whether that's possible. The other thing I might say is perhaps thinking a little bit outside the box, that the town could consider, for example, working with a particular property owner, in this case Bueno y Sano, in terms of what might happen to the Bank of America adjacent property. And so it wouldn't be, in my mind at least, it wouldn't be about trying to acquire that property, but perhaps there is some design assistance that the town could give in that regard. So in that sense, there's some funds or fees attached to the design.
Okay, but it wouldn't be money that would go to the property owner as part of the, it's not like additional acquisition money.
No, my understanding is that's what it wouldn't be. I wouldn't conceive of it certainly that way, that we're not using X number of dollars to buy a piece of land or to acquisition. No, it would be for design assistance, essentially.
Okay, thank you.
I recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Hi, I'm David Martin. I live on High Street. 2 questions. How much parking would Bueno y Sano lose in this plan? And what other businesses are affected in the same way?
Mr. Brockway?
Correct me if I'm wrong on this. So there are 2 different issues also here. And so one is, I think they're going to lose, there's a schematic design that would suggest that you could get 9 parking spaces in there, 8 regular and 1 handicap. That would require sort of 1 way in, 1 way out. I think currently there are 12, and you have entrances in both ways. It's not, I don't think it's only just an issue of sort of meeting zoning, for example, and the proposer of the amendment can explain more, but it also might be that there are sort of financial covenants, for example, attached to that property based on the number of parking spaces. And so, but basically my understanding is that we're losing about 3 parking spaces somewhere in that neighborhood.
And are there other businesses that are affected in the same way?
The issue, I don't think in terms of the exact same way, in terms of losing parking spaces that would impact the viability of their business to essentially proceed. The issue we have in terms of the design is that if you go, can I use the slides? Sorry. Thank you.
There we go.
So the issue we have with the design, in part, is that ideally we take the Route 27 below the intersection adjacent to Kmart and Verizon and sort of push the road that way as far as we could reasonably could. But when you go through the light, on the opposite sort of corner is the law offices. And so the way the grades work there, the law offices are up above the current road. And so by pushing, when you come through the light, you want to have the road line up and continue in a straight line sort of as you go through so that you don't have offset lanes. And so as it is now, that property is at its sort of physical limits in terms of the grades required to get into the site. So it still will operate in a sense, but it's being impacted in that sense in terms of sort of its access. To your question in particular, I don't think there are any other properties, certainly not in the impact of what might with Bueno Asano in terms of economic loss.
Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Jason Brady, 15 Larch Road, lifelong Acton resident, owner of Bueno Asano, 263 Main Street in Kelly's Corner. Just to follow up with what Chris spoke about earlier, growing up here, I can remember hearing a lot of friends and family say how the town needed a lot of good places, never really had any good places to eat and needed good places to eat. I still think that now. With the exception of my place, obviously. Although there are some very good restaurants and, you know, fast, quick service places in this general area and near me that have been very successful. A lot of them run by their, you know, sole proprietors or individual operators, which is nice to see. But I'm proud to say that after 7 years, Bueno Asano has become a relatively inexpensive, healthy place for elementary and high school students, young families, and even the people who have lived here longer than I have who are complaining about that there wasn't any good places to eat. Prior to me being in this location, a few operators have failed. I'm proud to say that after 7 years, we've become a part of the Acton community, and that for that we are very thankful. While I agree that there are challenges to Kelly's Corner, I do have some concerns with the new plan proposal. We do have a need for safer walkways for our kids to walk from schools to TC Lando's, Dunkin' Donuts, Sorrento's, the bowling alley, and Bueno Asano as well. But not a need for bike paths and ripping up parking lots of local business owners, where they would be directly impacted with losing customers and potential sales. This is Acton, it's not Cambridge. I don't think I've ever seen anyone ride a bike down Route 27, to be honest with you. But that's not the point. The point is that this would directly impact me, my customers, and would ultimately put us out of business. I understand that you mentioned that you would work with business owners that are directly affected by this. I haven't seen anything to this date. I've never been approached by anybody. We haven't had any conversations with regard to any of this. I know I'm not the owner of the property, but I am the active person that sits there and operates on a day-to-day basis. So my question is why, and you did allude to it earlier in reference to the amendment, why isn't there any opportunity to take space away from the other side of the intersection, maybe the grassy area at Verizon, or even half the Verizon parking lot that isn't even used by anybody other than a police officer sitting there watching the traffic go by? They're fortunate. I'm very fortunate enough to let them have my employees park there because I don't have any parking to begin with. And if I do lose an additional 3 to 4, even 5 spaces, that would leave me with one handicap spot and basically a place for a delivery truck to drop off food. Please consider taking this space that you need for this third turning lane or the bike path and potentially put it on the other side of the street or the intersection where there isn't a town resident who is a local business owner and whose livelihood will be directly impacted. Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
Andy, if you would be so kind as to put the slide back up of Kelly's Corner, please. Yes, that one. Andy, I just kind of see 5 spaces. I thought, did you say 9 spaces were planned for the after condition? Because I only see 5 there.
So I saw a sketch last week presented by the consultants that suggested you might be able to get 9.
Oh, okay. So this is not that plan?
No, not that particular, no.
Okay. So if we went with this plan, Bueno Isano would go from 12 spaces to 5 spaces, effectively overcutting their parking in half, correct?
It looks that way from this plan, yes.
Okay. I think that this just kind of illustrates that there just needs to be tighter cooperation, and I think Jason was saying that as well, between the town, the landowners, and the business owners. One other thing I want to point out is that the Bolodrome, my understanding, would lose an entire strip of parking in this widening plan. Is that your understanding too?
I don't know for sure on that. So.
Okay. So, and Andy, I think you guys, and I don't mean to be making this, but I think that your committee does great work, and this is an initiative that should be done in some form. I'm not necessarily sure if this is the right form, but my point is that and don't take this the wrong way, but that you don't know the impacts is disconcerting to me, and I think the rest of the public, that a body like this really should know what the impacts are. So I think, I'm willing to help illuminate the town in your committee, and I'm sure there's others that will help do that as well.
I'll recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Yes, Mike Owen, 93 Harris Street. I was on the MPO board. I actually voted on the MPO board. One of the things that we always looked at with complete streets was to make it more pedestrian and bike friendly, and this implies much more traffic. In fact, I've seen projects in Newton where they reduced 2 lanes on Washington Street down to 1 lane in order to have the bike lanes. This works the complete opposite. I can't believe that MassDOT kind of bought into this plan, because this is not a complete streets. This is a traffic accommodation, which to me doesn't make sense. If we want to make this the downtown area and we're looking to make it more walking friendly, this doesn't look like that's the plan. I don't know if bypass roads make more sense or something outside of that, but if you look at the intersection that they redid at 2A and 27, again, that's a state road and a town road. They didn't do those massive amounts of turning lanes. It's widening the road unnecessarily. If you're going to widen the road, make it for pedestrians and bikes, not for additional traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. I would implore town meeting members to really focus just on the amendment. We will have plenty of time, I suspect, to debate the full merits of the project. So I would ask that town meeting members that are at the microphones speak only to the amendment, please. Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Yes, my name is Ralph Lowry. I am very intimately associated with the Bueno Oceano operation, having done the bookkeeping there for Jason for a number of years. I'm curious as to, it's always been a problem with the access and with parking at that location. It's surprising that he manages to do the great amount of business that he does. It speaks to the attraction of what he offers. There's space in the back of the building, and I wonder if what possibility would exist within the town to be able to approve the reconfiguration of the rear of the building in such a way that parking could be done out there to compensate for the loss of parking spaces that may occur at the front of the building.
Mr. Brockway?
So I think the speaker's question is sort of what I was alluding to earlier in terms of the possibility, for example, where the Bank of America kiosk is that the town could assist in some sort of design effort to see, and in sort of conversations with Bank of America to see what could be done with that property. So.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
George Morton, 26 Marshall Path. I'd like to move the question.
Motion to cut off debate has been made and seconded. Requires a 2/3 majority. All those in favor of the motion to cut off debate, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Nay. The debate is... What is your point of order? Can you read, before we vote, can you read it? Because yes, I will read the amendment. But right now, debate has been cut off. I will read the proposed amendment, and again, this is what we are voting on, and it requires a simple majority vote. The proposed amendment, which will follow on the end of the current motion, is the town shall make best efforts to minimize the negative impacts of property takings related to the Kelly's Corner infrastructure project on private landowners and small businesses. To this end, the town shall work diligently with residents, landowners, and local businesses to develop and evaluate alternatives to the project design. A reasonable amount of the project contingency funds shall be allocated to fund said cooperation between the town and local stakeholders. That is the amendment that would follow on to the motion that had been read earlier. I believe we are ready to vote on the amendment. Again, it takes a simple majority. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The amendment carries. We will now go back to the main motion. Before we do, I would implore town meeting members to please refrain from personal names if we can at all possible. Those are the rules of the road here. We will now move back to the main motion, and I will open it up for debate on the main motion. I will remind everyone that the main motion, as amended, does require a 2/3 vote. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Charles Cadillac, Paul Revere Road. I'd like to take you back 2 years to the April 16th annual town meeting, Article 23, titled Kelly's Corner Improvement Initiative 100% Design. The article itself, the motion on the article, very quickly, I don't have much time, said Mr. Clymer moves the town appropriate $756,000 to be expended by the town manager for the purposes set forth in the article, including costs incidental thereto and so forth. The purposes stated in the article, I'll read only a piece of it. Under the summary, says this request would fund the completion of the engineering design plan and so on. So here we are 2 years later, having voted $750,000 to get this job done, and now we're told we need another $344,000 for the design, which is a 46% increase. Yes, I read all the explanations, but let me tell you, nothing's really changed at Kelly's Corner, excuse me. That's significant. All of these problems were known and mentioned over and over again many times. My friend without the hair, the tall guy, and me were at Roland Bartle's office 2 years ago, and when the question of needing additional width to the various roadways, since the town doesn't own any of the land, came up, and we asked the town planner whether this will interfere with any of the businesses. The answer was no. That was 2 years ago. The problems that were being described, well known. You know, let's take the Hosmer house. That's been there for 250 years. I think we knew what the problems were. This article, the motion, especially with the amendment, is a blank check to spend more money. You're going to keep analyzing, keep designing. Nothing will really change. There are no really good solutions. You can.
Yes. I'm sorry, your point of order is? Yes, I would ask the speaker to please wrap up his comments.
Okay, I think you get the point. We're back to where we were over again. This is just an opening to spending a lot more money. Please vote no.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Hi, Franny Osmond, 16 Half Moon Hill. I have a question and a comment. Is that okay?
Yes.
The question is, at what point does the plan get approved by the town? I feel like when I read through this article, it's not saying, do I agree with every detail of this plan? I think it's saying we need more money to continue making the plan. And, yeah. And so I was a little unclear. I've been talking to a lot of people who have some difficulties with parts of the plan, say tree removal or roadway, you know, and I do too, but I always feel like there's a place and time to go to the committee or go to the planning department. So can you tell me, are we approving the plan or are we approving the continuing with the process?
Mr. Brockway?
So we as the general public in town are not approving the plan. So we have the ability to comment on the plan. Again, the Mass Department of Transportation is the agency overseeing the review of the project, and they're ultimately the ones that are going to approve the design, and in conjunction with, excuse me, the Mass Metropolitan Planning Organization. So we have an opportunity to comment on it, in particular coming up in, say, June and July of this year. We have a chance to sort of forward our comments. The public hearing again will be Mass DOT, but we're not voting to up or down on the plan itself or any particular part of it.
Okay. I want to urge people to vote yes for this, and I'll tell you why. First of all, I'm very glad we made the amendment because, oh, is that my 2 minutes? Does that include
you have
the
about
answer?
45 seconds.
Really, including?
Time flies.
We use Bueno Isano a lot. I have concerns, like other people do, about trying to limit the number of trees and also about adding turning lanes and worrying that it will speed up traffic. But I have a lot of trust in my fellow townspeople. I looked that we had made the 2020 plan April 3rd, 2012. We voted for Acton 2020. In 2013, we started the Kelly's Corner plan. We said we wanted it to be a town center. We said we wanted it to be walkable. It promotes people with disabilities and who want walking. It removes a lot of the troubles with, it's from my glasses, I think it's going up now. So it helps the air to make it a walkable community. We need to trust our excellent planning staff and consultants, or get rid of them if we don't, and our committee. So thank you for your work, and I urge you to vote yes on Article 9 and not put the stop to this.
Thank you. Recognize the speaker, microphone number 4.
Yes, Tara Fredericks, West Acton. I'm in favor of all the good things about this, but I have a lot of concerns. And we've been going to the meetings, the 3 meetings that I've been at, and we've said, what about Bueno Usano? What about the trees? What about the extra turning lanes? And they hear our comments, and then next time it comes back, exactly the same. Andy wrote to me in an email a couple of days ago that he hopes to make the changes that we want, and I urge you to commit to those changes, not just say you'll try, because that's what we've heard before, and we aren't getting them. And you talked about a well-established design, and that's a well-established design that ignored our comments. I urge you to have afternoon or evening meetings so people who are, parents can come, people who have jobs can come. I am very concerned about these extra turning lanes. I think they're unnecessary and they speed up traffic. They increase the curb-to-curb distance for children and people with disabilities to travel. I think we need to take a stand against the concept of speeding up the traffic through there and err on the side of walkability and slowness. And so unless the committee can actually commit to doing that, I feel like we have to vote no to get the design that we want, because if you wait until the 75% design, then we'll have spent, however much more millions of dollars, and we still won't have a design that we want. And we can, yes, this vote is not about the takings. We can ultimately have say over the design, and we can vote it down. But I don't think we should wait that long. I feel like we need you to come back with a design that we actually support now, as opposed to spending a ton more money on stuff that we don't like. Thank you.
I recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
I've served on 2 different Kelly's Corners committees before the Acton 2020 even was born. We've been doing this for a very long time, and it's now time to do it. I understand that people are upset with design costs, but I think that last December we voted to do a design cost for some schools, which we really don't know what the costs are going to be. And last night we voted for some design costs for a fire station, which we really don't know what the costs are going to be. So I think it's time to get our act together, use the monies that we've got from TIP and from the DOT, and get the Kelly's Corner project done. So let's vote yes and do something positive for a while.
I recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
I also...
I'm sorry, could you please give your name and address, please?
Maya Minkin, 37 Minuteman Road in Acton. And I think it's going to cost money to start being thoughtful about what we do in Acton. And unfortunately, I think we have ended up with a lot of hodgepodgey areas, and we have to do this in a thoughtful way where safety is primary. I can't tell you how often my kids walk down to that area, and I'm worried about it. And someone mentioned walkability and biking, and that they see no bikes there, but I think we see no bikes in Acton because we haven't made that available and safe for kids or for adults, frankly. So I do think I'm sympathetic to the previous gentleman who spoke about more spending and whether, we need to do more planning around Kelly's Corner, but I think we do. We have to make Acton a safer, more walkable town. We should save trees. We should save parking spots for businesses. There's a lot to consider here. It takes money, but we have to start doing things in a really thoughtful, thorough way in Acton that meets all of our needs. But I'm also sympathetic to another point that was made at microphone number 4 about the design and making sure that people really buy in to what they said they wanted through 2020. We sat through a lot of meetings and had a lot of vision for what we want to see happen there. So again, I urge people to vote yes. It's going to take time, it's going to take money, but I really hope you engage people in town in their ideas and follow through with what you said you would help us to do in this area. Thank you.
I recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
Larry Kanah, Betsy Ross Circle. I'm speaking as the chair of the Economic Development Committee. The Economic Development Committee considered this article and we unanimously support it. Thank you very much.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Hi, I'm Lee Kettleson, Half Moon Hill, and you'll see that not everyone in Half Moon Hill agrees all the time with each other. I've never been up here to talk before. I'm very grateful to the people in town who put so much time in, and I usually, therefore, give deference to the people working closest on a topic, and I come to town meeting and I vote yes most of the time, like many of you do. But sometimes things get off track. And democracy and town meeting are all about reviewing and participating, and so I have to oppose this plan going forward. I support progress. I support investment for the future, long-range planning, working for high-density walkable areas instead of sprawl, working for pedestrian-friendly, bike-friendly, all good. I don't see that clearly in this plan, and it's presented as a full design. Kelly's Corner needs improvement, but to me, one of the area's best existing features that need to be preserved are the big, beautiful old growth oaks that line Mass Ave from the corner you're talking about through the school area. When I drive into town from the east on Route 111, I see a shopping center, CVS, commercial non-native landscape, uninspiring to say the least. But then I come to the corner and there are those beautiful old oaks that so far we have preserved. It cheers me up every time. But it's not just me and the tree huggers. People are shown to be healthier and happier around trees, and big shade trees enhance any town center. I looked closely at the plan. I had to expand it and look at the fine print, and just on the north side of Mass Ave from Route 27 to the school turnoff at Charter Road, I counted 24 significant trees marked remove. That includes my favorite, the huge oak just before the old high school, marked on the plan as circumference of 72 inches. Sure, plant new trees, but plant them in between the big trees, and in 40 years they can replace the old ones that die. But these little ones don't give the benefits to humans and wildlife for the next 40 to 50 years that mature trees do. Removing these trees impoverishes the area, and I can't vote to spend more tax money given that you've already spent a lot on a design and you came back cutting down all these trees. I also have to say I can't believe you didn't talk to the restaurant owner.
Ma'am, I would ask that you please wrap up your comments.
I'm done. Anyway, I hope you please go back to the drawing board and prove how you can keep most of the big trees.
Recognize the next speaker at microphone number 2.
Lucia Hicks, 11 Sawmill Road. We had some discussion last night about how much of town revenues come from property taxes, from residential property taxes, and how little come from businesses. And we now have this plan that seems to threaten several of the businesses, Bueno Isano and the bowling alley. I love the bowling alley. There's not many places anymore that have a bowling alley, a place where kids and families can go and hang out. I've never been to Bueno Isano, now I have to go. Anyway, I really have reservations. I don't know if I'm against it per se, but I really have reservations about this plan, which allegedly was not going to hurt any of these businesses, and now we're hearing that it may very well do that. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
So, and again, I am in favor of a better Kelly's Corner. And
could you identify yourself?
Yeah, Chris
Starr,
6 Littlefield Road, and also owner of 263 Main Street. But I want to point out that that there seems to be kind of these inconsistencies in what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that perhaps my property is going to be valueless or not nearly impacted. So there might be 9 spaces, there might be 5 spaces, there might be 12 spaces. I don't know. But I think that what my concern is that I don't know if this plan is fully baked yet, and if it's going to be fully baked for this June. I also know that a gentleman here said that he asked the I don't know if it was FinCom or whatever, but he said, well, how much was the takings going to cost? And they said, well, we don't know. So these are the questions, I think, that instead of having this death by 1,000 cuts where there's $750,000 that was allocated to this project back in 2016, another 460 some odd thousand going into it this year. I think that we should know, and the electorate should know, how much the takings are going to cost, because certainly I'm going to want to know if my land's valueless, and what that money looks like. So I don't know if I could ask that question again. Maybe this group has a better understanding of how much the taking is going to cost.
Mr. Brockway?
Can I ask for some assistance from the Finance Department on answering this question?
Mr. McMullen?
So I'm Brian McMullen, the town assessor. So as you can all imagine, this question's come up quite often. It's a complex question. And so it's not the taking itself that has the value. It's taking that property away from the mothership is where the true value lies. So if, for instance, if one particular property, you may take 1,000 square feet of property, and you have to look at what's the impact of that. So in the case of Bueno, it may be an economic taking, where you can no longer, basically do your restaurant business there. In other particular cases, you may take 3,000 square feet on a property, but it may have no economic impact at all. So the value is much smaller. So it's a very complex matter. I think in the cases, it's really kind of a case-by-case basis on the financial impact of that. And hence, frankly, the $125,000 is going to determine what that cost is. So there's no good way right now to determine that until you have somebody that's an expert in that field to do those appraisals.
But there's no estimates at this point? There are no estimates at this point? I mean, I would assume that somebody would have some idea how much this is all going to cost at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, there are no present estimates right now on what those takings will actually cost. And again, a lot of them are when they're going to be individually negotiated in some cases with the property owners. There may be other things involved, other non-monetary items. So it's a very complex matter.
Is there an allocation for the businesses that lose their business? If Jason loses his business as a result, is there some sort of compensation that would be offered up to him?
I believe that is the case, and I think that will be determined once we spend that $125,000 to determine that.
But the business, not me as a landowner, my understanding of taking, I'm compensated for my property, but he's a business owner. So I don't know if there's a mechanism in the law that allows for that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's a very good question. I don't have the answer to that, but I think in the case where you have a leased property, it's usually the landowner that's impacted that. If that business can no longer thrive as the current business that it is, or the current operation, it's impacting you as the landowner. I don't know about the actual operator of the actual business that's located in there, but I'm sure that's all going to be vetted out through that $125,000 appraisal process. It's very, very complex. You can't just take a per acre value and apply it across the board. You can say an acre of land in Acton is X amount of dollars. That's not the case here. You can't do it on a per square foot basis and saying for every square foot that we take, it's going to cost you $90. Every one of these properties is unique unto itself. You have a vast variety of properties there. You have condominiums, you have garden-style condominiums, you have townhouse condominiums, you have retail space, you have professional office space, you have a gas station, you have restaurant businesses. Each and every one of those is going to be analyzed on an individual case basis. It's extremely complicated.
So but the town's being asked to put another 460 some odd thousand to find these answers out. Is that correct?
Mr. Brockway, do you want to answer that?
Yes, effectively, the town is putting up to $469,000 at risk here to keep the project moving forward.
Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
My name is Greg Jarbo, 5 Cherokee Road. I've lived in town 40 years, and we've been talking about Kelly's Corner since I got here. And this is the farthest we've gotten so far. And if the amendment to this motion had not passed, I could understand some of the concern. But it passed. So asking questions now, well, what about the impact on business? It's like, excuse me, didn't we just vote on that? So I would urge town meeting to, understand that the issue got addressed, and the Board of Selectmen support this, the Finance Committee support this. I was on the Board of Selectmen once upon a time, and I can tell you it is really hard to get both of those boards to agree. And the amount of time that has been spent so far to get us this far is like, no, I still can't ride my bicycle down 111. But hey, trust me, you don't want to be here 40 years from now still debating this. So I would urge everyone to vote yes.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Danny Factor, 11 Davis Road. I just want to say something briefly. I myself am going to be voting no because of some of the concerns that have been expressed, not as much because of the small businesses, because I think a lot of that matter was resolved by the amendment, but I have concerns about the over 100 trees that are going to be cut down. I've listened to the concerns about the turning lane and have come to understand that a plan that sounds like it's going to be pedestrian friendly is actually making things less pedestrian friendly with a longer time to get from curb to curb when you have the turning lanes. Now, I'm going to be voting no, and I respect anyone here who votes yes, because I think it's been a very thoughtful discussion. But the one thing I do want to say is, please don't vote yes just because you feel like we have to do something. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Eleanor Matthews, 241 Central Street. There are several issues that have made me have concern about this plan. I certainly agree about the elderly trees and the green of large trees in our midst that is so important and so important for our climate. And similarly for the climate, the plan, I really resonated with the gentleman who spoke about having worked on complete streets and his astonishment that this plan is so traffic friendly and not so friendly, and emphasizing pedestrians and bike paths. You really need to have protected bike lanes in order to make a difference in how many people do biking along our roads. So I would much prefer not to widen the left turn lanes to 2 lanes each, and to have protected bike lanes and shorter crossings for the pedestrians. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Mary Donald, 42 Taylor Road. I would like to move the question. I think everything has been beaten to death.
Thank you. Motion to cut off debate has been made and seconded. All those in favor of cutting off debate, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Debate is cut off. We will vote. I will remind everyone that the motion is the motion that was made and amended. It included the additional language at the end. This also requires a 2/3 majority, so we will vote by the clickers, the electronic clickers. So I know you've put them away and haven't used them for a while, so please turn them on by pressing gently the orange button. Is everyone ready? Remember, if you want to vote in favor of the motion as amended, please press the A button for yes. We have a point of order, I'm sorry. No, that is the amendment. That is not the full motion. Do we have the full motion as amended? Why don't we show the initial motion so people can read that, and then after people have had a chance to read that, then put up the amendment language as well, because that will just follow on at the end. So we have the amendment language too? No, that's not the right language. Don't show that, please. That's the amendment language up here, the original proposed amendment to the end of the motion. Okay, do we have the clickers all straightened away? One more dead battery. Well, what if you already voted? The voting window hasn't opened yet, so you'd better vote again when the voting window opens. Are we all set with clickers now? Okay. I will open the voting window now. Again, press A for yes and E for no. Voting window is open. The voting window is now closed, and we will see the result here shortly. If you'd like to stand up and stretch for 30 seconds, feel free. We have the result. The motion fails. It has not achieved the 2/3 required, literally by 1%, or 2%, actually. So the motion fails. Point of order. What is your point of order? I think there is such a procedure. Let me just confer with counsel. I think there are two procedures. Here, excuse me. The Reconsideration of a vote is governed by the general bylaws of the town, and it reads as follows. Any voter shall be permitted to move reconsideration of a vote taken at town meetings, subject to the limitations or exceptions set forth in succeeding subsections of this bylaw, which I am about to read. A motion to reconsider any vote taken at the meeting shall require a 2/3 vote if made at the same... I already laughed because when I read that. Made at the same session at which the vote to be reconsidered is taken. If made at any adjourned session of the meeting, 3/4 vote is required, as well as notice of intention given to the town clerk. This bylaw does not limit the number of times that reconsideration of a vote may be moved, except that at a single session, such reconsideration can only be moved once. A motion to reconsider a vote is debatable if a motion originating the vote was debatable. The foregoing provisions shall not, however, prevent the Board of Selectmen from moving reconsideration at any time when, in their unanimous judgment, reconsideration is in the best interests of the town. So that is the rule. Would you come to a microphone, please?
I beg the indulgence of town meeting and understand how tired and how rushed we are, but given how close this was, I would move for reconsideration.
Sir, can you identify yourself, please?
You would think I would know to do that by now. Jesse, Liberty Farmstead Way.
Thank you. The motion to reconsider the vote has been made and seconded. As I just read, that motion is in fact debatable. I see one member wishing to speak. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
I just had a question about parliamentary procedure. Normally, when you reconsider something, you have to be someone who voted in favor of it or against it. You know, in other words, you had to be on the winning side. And I just was wondering if that applied in this case, if we have to know how Mr. Liberty voted in the first instance.
The town bylaw does not provide any limitation as far as that goes. Recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Miriam Lezak, High Street. If this does not pass, or if this vote does not change, what happens to the $750,000 that we've already spent and to the plan going forward?
Mr. Brockway.
So two-part answer to that. So first I want to make clear that the submission, the 25% design submission has been made to Mass DOT. So they're going to go ahead and review this regardless of what the sort of whether we voted to do the appraisals or not. Everybody in town can participate in sort of providing comments and sort of feedback on that public hearing again sometime in June and July. So that part's going to go forward no matter what. After that, though, the project, will most likely have to halt the project and sort of reconsider about whether or not to come back again and ask for appraisal funding. Because we can't complete the project without doing the appraisals. It's a requirement of the federal. We have to do it by federal standards, and we have to do the appraisals before we can even approve this, before we can do acquisitions.
Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Lauren Rosenzweig Morton, 26 Marshall Path. Many years ago, it feels like I was in the same position as the presenter and presented a plan for Kelly's Corner that we vetted with many, many people. And I think people didn't believe us when we said that the trees were going to come down anyway, that, were on the hill there behind what is now CVS. And the town voted it down, and rather than a plan of a nice town-centered kind of development, we've got CVS, the banks, et cetera, that are there now. And, you know, I really, really urge people to approve this money, approve this reconsideration, so that we can go into more detail and give more public input. I think the frustration of committees is that they ask for public input and people don't come to their meetings. And so I think they, you know, really need to better advertise them or something so that people can have this input, save the trees that are important to them, do the things that they want to do. It's not a final design. They're looking for input to have a better or best design and to have the federal government and state government, whoever else, not just the town, support those changes that make it a much safer and cohesive area. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dave Wellinghoff, Mohegan Road. And, you know, I just questioned the value of having a second vote. We had a fair and formal vote on the issue. The technology allowed very specific counting of the votes. Some people have moved in and out of the room since that point. I consider the vote to be relatively fair. I think the room, obviously the majority feel otherwise. I just question the validity of keep voting until we get the results that the majority likes. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
Bob Miller, 84 Windsor Avenue, West Acton. As someone who actually walks from West Acton to Kelly's Corner to go to Dunkin' Donuts, that crossing intersection is awful. I'm encouraged actually by the answer of the presenter that if the motion continues to go down, that the design continues. And we don't have to spend any more money, correct me if I'm wrong, to get to a design that we then could vote on to decide if we wanted to spend money to determine how much it's going to cost. And given that there seems to be concern about the wide intersection, which is already a wide intersection and difficult to cross, it seems to me that that's an important thing to get solved before we spend money to do the appraisals. So did I misunderstand, or have I got that right?
Mr. Brockway?
So the design submission has been made to the Mass DOT, and that will be reviewed, and again, everybody can provide input there. I would think, though, that the ongoing, so regardless whether we pass appraisals or not tonight, we're going to wait for sort of, no design is going to be taking place right now until we get sort of more comments back in the public hearing from DOT. After that point, so I'm not sure that the design would progress. We'd have to see whether or not it'd be realistic to think we could come back at some point to town meeting and ask for the appraisals. And if the judgment's made that we just don't think we're going to get it, then perhaps the design stops there.
My sense is that the problem here is that we've spent a lot of money over 20 to 40 years, and I've been in town for 25 of those, in many Kelly Corner discussions, that we're now at a point we're going to spend more money, but we still don't know the design. It seems to me that we should get close to a design that everybody likes, that we could all get on board and say, yeah, go get the appraisal. And I think that's why you're at a 4-vote away from having an approval on this. So,
recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Tara Fredericks. Okay, so first of all, I think Lauren and I served on the Board of Selectmen when the CVS application came forward, which was a special permit, so we could have said no to that. So any reference to CVS at that location was relative to people voting for it, even though it wasn't what we wanted. So then to now say that because we don't like it, that now we should vote for more unwise things. Anyway, I'll put that aside. I came to every single meeting that was in the evening, okay, after my work. And we told them about the trees. We told them about the turning lanes. And every single time it came back the same. And the 25% submittal was sent in, and they told us, oh gosh, well we can make changes afterwards. Then at the first hearing after, the first meeting after the 25% submission, they said, oh no, now you can't make any changes now that we gave it to the state for the 25% official design. I was like, what kind of bait and switch is that? But my last point and my question to town council, is that amendment binding to the town to make Chris happy? Or is that just, as it says, you know, good efforts, best efforts? But best efforts, they could just do nothing. Is that correct?
Mr. Moderator, I have a point of order.
What's your point of order?
Shouldn't we be debating on whether we're going to reconsider this vote or not, as opposed to...
I was about to admonish town meeting members that we need to focus on the motion to reconsider the vote.
I think
And
it's important to know. Oh, sorry.
That is a very narrow subject in my view. I will let town council answer, and then
Thank you.
I would hope that we could move to the vote very quickly.
The amendment that was passed is binding. The language that was used in the amendment is not specific with respect to the amount of funds that need to be used for the alternative designs, and therefore, or who determines what constitutes the appropriate level of effort put in by the town. So it is subject to interpretation. It is, however, binding.
Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Adam Parker, Half Moon Hill. I want to speak narrowly to the motion. We debated this for about an hour. The vote happened. We fell short of the required threshold, and yet the path to a majority is very, very clear. There were several issues that were raised that were the reason that people voted no, and having the planners and other town officials respond to those criticisms in a binding way will be, in a subsequent town meeting, well good enough to get this to a two-thirds majority. So I would suggest that the remedy that's before us is to change the plan so that it achieves greater than a two-thirds vote. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1. Number 1.
I had a question. If we want to make an amendment, is it possible to make an amendment on a reconsideration?
We are simply right now considering whether
I understand that.
to reconsider the vote.
Right, and so it's not possible? I was hoping to make a tree amendment before we ended.
No, it is not.
Okay.
I recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Catherine Trotter Wilson, 53 Seminole Road. I would like to call the question.
Thank you. Is there a second for that? Thank you. All those in favor of cutting off debate on the motion to reconsider, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Point of order. What is your point of order?
Two-thirds requirement, I think they should be using your... No, this is just to cut off debate.
That's just to cut off debate. I think I can usually determine that based on a voice vote. Not always, but I think I can. So I rule that the debate has been cut off. So we will now vote on the motion to reconsider. Let me confer with council one more time. I'm told I did not call for the entire vote on the motion to cut off debate, so we will do that again. All those in favor of cutting off debate, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. The motion carries. So the motion before us is to reconsider the vote, which is a two-thirds, which requires a two-thirds majority. So we will use the clickers for this one. So please turn on your clickers by pressing the orange button. Hopefully they're all working since they were just used recently. Is everyone ready to vote? Remember to vote by pressing the A button for a yes vote or the E button for a no vote. I now declare that the voting window is open. Please vote. The voting window has closed. Wait. Oh. We will reopen the voting window. If you have already voted, I don't believe you will need to vote again. Is that correct? Okay, so just go, if you have not voted, just go ahead and vote. Okay, I believe we're all set now. We will tally the vote. I think we can see that the motion to reconsider the vote has failed. So, I think we are finally have disposed of Article 9. We will now move to Article 10, which is capital infrastructure. Ms. Adachi moves that the town appropriate and transfer from free cash $149,000 to be expended by the town manager for the purposes set forth in the article, including costs incidental and related thereto. Do I have a second? Ms. Adachi, the motion has been made and seconded. I think you requested 3 minutes on this one, so you may proceed.
Actually, I think I requested 2, but thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 10 encompasses 2 capital items, both of which will be paid out of the general fund, so there's no bonding involved. The first item is to preserve the whistle ban in Acton. We have 6 railroad crossings, and we've been grandfathered to continue the whistle ban. Federal regulation now requires that we shore up the safety at those crossings, basically providing warnings of all sorts, and also providing barriers to block not only motor vehicles, but pedestrians, so that they won't try to cross the railroads when the train is approaching. That seems sort of logical, but apparently you need not only warnings, but you need barriers, because some pedestrians will try to cross the tracks. And then the other item in Article 10 is a proposed bike share program. This is a 2-year pilot. It's a collaboration with the town of Maynard, which will also have bike share stations. The total cost is $36,000, but we have 3 business sponsors, each of whom will pay in $9,000 apiece for the 2-year program, leaving a $9,000 cost that the town will bear, so it's $4,500 a year. That cost to the town is likely to be further offset by the fees that the bike users will pay. The use of the bikes is automated. I think you have a phone, you can upload an application to unlock the bikes and all the rest of it. I heard about it, but I don't know all the details. I'm sure if you're interested, you can find out. And this complements the Complete Streets program that got a little bit of coverage yesterday, where we're trying to enhance the safety for all kinds of transportation, not principally motor vehicles, but bicycles and pedestrian, all kinds of things on wheels that don't involve motors. So, and this is a photograph of Zaxter's bike station. Zaxter is the company that's going to be providing the bikes. There will be 5 bikes at West Acton and also at the South Acton train station. And the Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends this article.
Finance Committee?
Mr. Chairman, the Finance Committee recommends this article.
Thank you. I'll open it up for debate now. Any of those wishing to ask questions or discuss this motion? Recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Hi, Tammy Govey. I'm at 442 Great Elm Way. I live in the village of Nagog Woods, which is in North Acton. Just wondering if you can explain how the decision was made to put the bike share program in the locations that you did and if there are ever plans to extend to other parts of the town. Thank you.
Ms. Adachi?
Mr. Moderator, thank you. I wasn't involved in the decision. I know that the planning department people were involved in sort of working with the Zaxter people as well as the town of Maynard to pick locations. I think it also had to do with where the property was available to site the bike share program. I know that in West Acton there is a business that was prepared to have the bike stand location there. I would expect that if this pilot program works well, that the town would be prepared to consider expanding the availability of the bikes in other parts of town. As I said, there will be similar bike stands in Maynard. The expectation is that there will be people actually using the Assabet River Rail Trail, which runs between the towns and within the towns to commute, because there are, for a number of people who actually go to the South Acton train station and then I think take a shuttle to Maynard. There's a robust transportation system in that respect. So,
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Yeah, hi, Georgia Berry, Martin Street. As somebody who sleeps with their head almost right next to one of said grade crossings, and I have most of my life, I was just, and I know that they just got upgraded when they got double tracked and stuff, and I'm completely for anything that will keep the whistle ban in place, but I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on what more we would have to do to the grade crossings to keep them acceptable to the FRA.
Ms. Adachi?
Mr. Moderator, well, what I know is in the slide, I don't know, it's a slide that lists, it's just a lot of warning systems, bells, whistles, and then also the bear, whoops, no, that's all the information I have. It's, okay. And then the barriers, there will actually be bars that will lower to prevent motorists and pedestrians from crossing.
As in, I'm sorry, as in like more than the gates we currently have?
More than what? Excuse me?
More than the, I'm sorry, I can ask later, I guess, but I just would like to know because this is something that very, very directly affects me and this, you know, my neighborhood.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
The person who would know more of the details is the Department of Public Works Director. He's the one who provided the information that's in this slide. And if you want to, get in touch with the Board of Selectmen or the town manager, and we can put you in touch with him if you have specific questions about what kinds of devices are necessary at these crossings to allay any concerns you have about, I don't know, sound or lights or whatever it is.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Tara Fredericks, West Acton. I love the bike program. I hope this is a huge success. I think we should have 3 or 4 or more all over the place, but I have one question. And for those who are money focused, I believe that the research I've done indicates that towns that have these types of programs, their property values hold or go up. So please see that correlation. My question is, and I have a comment about the whistle ban after, but the question is this a pay for bike thing? Because I prefer free. I think that we should be sponsoring that. No, seriously, this adds to your property value, folks.
Ms. Adachi?
Mr. Moderator, it is paid for. Right now, I don't recall what the fees are, but they're not inordinately burdensome for people in a community like ours.
Thank you.
I mean, I assume that at some point, perhaps, we could talk about subsidized fees for bike use, but right now, there are fees anticipated to be charged to users.
Thank you. My last comment is about the whistle ban. When the new train track went in West Acton, I counted 24 new signs. Okay, so I'm not sure how that makes me safer when I'm busy looking at signs to figure out which one I'm actually supposed to look at. So I hope that they minimize the amount of signage. And also, it's so ugly, like the chain link fence that they put in, all this stuff. They didn't go through the Historic District Commission, who would have made it more beautiful. And I urge to this time to do it right. Thank you.
I recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Catherine Black, Central Street. I walk through West Acton quite often. There are already barriers coming down across the sidewalks for the train stations. I don't see that there's really too much more you can do there. Are they talking about adding further barriers out to the side where there are no sidewalks, say further down on Central Street? I'm a little confused.
Mr. Moderator, I actually don't know what precisely is proposed for each crossing or whether each crossing requires any kind of enhancement of safety features. That's something that, as I said, our DPW director would be more familiar with because he's more familiar with the federal regulations that apply and require that we do something.
All right, thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Hi, I'm David Martin. I live on High Street, but I'm also chair of SATSAC. I don't know all the answers in this specific case, but I can tell you a little bit about how the mitigating measures work. There's a zone, and I think the zone is all the crossings we have in Acton in this case. You don't have to meet standards at every crossing. You have to the points are averaged across all the crossings in the town or all the crossings in the zone. The things that get you increased safety are the barriers like we have on Mass at the Mass Ave crossing, where there's a median strip near the crossing that prevents vehicles from trying to turn around at the crossing or going next to another vehicle at the crossing. Or quad gates, which we have no quad gates in the town now. I don't know if they're proposed, but there are things like that. And you don't have to put them at all the crossings. If you upgrade some of the crossings, you get more points at those crossings, and then it's averaged across the zone.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Good evening, Benjamin Blumenthal, 51 Concord Road. I'd like to move the question to vote, please.
Motion to cut off debate has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion to cut off debate has passed. I will now call for the vote. This takes a simple majority to pass. All those in favor of the motion as read, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The motion carries. We will now move to Article 11. Do you have a point of order? I think that we need a microphone on microphone number 2, please. No, please stay at microphone number 2 and.
Carolyn Kiley, Parkland Lane, Acton. At last year's town meeting, someone put forward a motion to take the marijuana article out of order, and I was wondering if it's possible to take Article 26 out of order and move it forward to now.
That is usually something that is done at the start of either at the start of the first night of town meeting or the second night tonight. I'm really not inclined to accept that motion at this point in time. We'll move on to Article 11, which is land lease for 19 and 21 Maple Street. The motion is Mr. Barry moves that the town take no action. Do I have a second? Mr. Barry, do you want to speak to why you want to take no action?
The town has not been able to negotiate an agreement with the landowner to acquire the property or lease the property for parking purposes, which the town has been trying to do for some time. But at this point, we don't have any agreement, so there's no action to be taken on this motion.
Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee concurs with the Board of Selectmen.
Open it up to see if anybody wants to debate this. I see no one standing, so I will call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We'll now move to Article 12. Ms. Green moves that the town take no action. Ms. Green?
Similar situation to the last one. We have no agreement with the landowner, so there's no action to be taken.
Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee also agrees to take no action.
I see no one standing to debate this one either, so I will call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The motion carries. We will now move on to Article 13. As I indicated last night, the selectmen have taken Articles 13 and 15 off the consent agenda because the town has reached an agreement on those two articles. So we will handle those two before we get to the financial consent agenda. So I will read the motion for Article 13. Mr. Barry moves that the town appropriate and transfer $50,000 from the fiscal year 2019 town operating budget to fund the cost items contained in the fiscal year 2019 collective bargaining agreement between the town and the Acton Police Patrol Officers Association. Do I have a second? Mr. Barry, the motion has been made and seconded. You may speak to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is a requirement of the state statutes governing public employee collective bargaining unions that once a town reaches an agreement about increasing costs for under collective bargaining agreements, town meeting has to appropriate the funds to meet those requirements. The town has 5 employee unions. 2 of them are in the police department, police officers and the police superior officers unit, which represents the sergeants and lieutenants in the police department. The first agreement we're looking at tonight is the police officers contract. It's a 1-year contract. It expires, the current agreement expires June 30th at the end of this fiscal year, June 30th, 18. It's a 1-year agreement for a 2% increase and an increase from $48 an hour to $52 an hour for private details. The way this works is the police officers are paid for working details on public ways that are that have construction jobs going on, making sure traffic flows safely. There's a statute that governs this detail pay. The town collects the pay from the contractors first before they actually pay it out to the police officers, so that there is no cost increase for this particular item to the town. The town has a special language in their contract with the police officers that if it's a town detail, municipal properties, crew working on trees or whatever, the rate is lower than the $52 an hour. It's just a standard time and a half for police officers. The terms of the current contract would stay in place until the new contract comes into effect. The next contract cycle would start in 2020 for fiscal years 20 through 22. These are usually 3-year deals, but the town has reached a 1-year agreement here for 2%. We have a new town manager coming in, and this would set the standard for other unions that whose contracts expire this year. The dispatchers who work in the police station and the DPW and municipal property employees, contracts also expire. So the salary adjustment is for 32 police officers. 2% equals $50,000 for fiscal year 19. That would come out of money that this town meeting appropriated for the fiscal year 19 budget, even though the money is included in the budget, and the statute still requires that town meeting approve these particular cost increases. So it's already in the budget. It doesn't require any transfers from free cash. These are the current patrol salaries, and the town is very careful to ensure that the salaries are comparable to other communities that are similar size and size of the police force as Acton has. Same way with the detail pay. The $52 represents a comparable amount of money that other similar communities pay their officers for details. These are 7 steps. Officer who's newly hired starts obviously at step 1. These go up every year to step 7. So that's the current salaries and the proposed salaries. So that concludes my presentation on Article 13. The selectmen unanimously voted to recommend this article to town meeting.
Finance Committee recommendation?
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends this article.
Thank you. I'll open it up for debate. I see no one standing, so we will vote. This requires a simple majority. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The motion carries unanimously. We will now move to Article 15. Also to fund collective bargaining, the police superior officers. The motion is Mr. Berry moves that the town appropriate and transfer $20,000 from the fiscal year 2019 town operating budget to fund the cost items contained in the fiscal year 2019 collective bargaining agreement between the town and the Massachusetts Coalition of Police Local 380. Do I have a second? Mr. Berry, to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Again, this is the police superior officers, the sergeants and lieutenants in the police department. It's the same terms as the town negotiated with the officers. A 2% pay increase. Again, that would set the standard for dealing with the dispatchers union and the DPW municipal employees union that they have not scheduled meetings yet, but again, their contracts end at the end of this fiscal year as well. It also increases the detail rate from $48 to $52 an hour, and similar terms for the officers. It's a salary adjustment. There are 8 personnel in the superior officers bargaining unit, 2 lieutenants and 6 sergeants. This would cost $20,000, again, already appropriated in the fiscal year 19 budget. And these are the salaries for the lieutenants that are currently in effect and would be proposed under the 2% increase. 10 steps for lieutenants. These are the sergeant's salaries. They have 7 steps, current and proposed. And I believe that concludes my presentation on Article 15, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. The Finance Committee recommendation?
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends this article.
Thank you. I'll open it up for debate. See no one standing, so we will vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The motion carries unanimously. We will now go to what are called the financial consent agenda. There are 11 articles here which are financial in nature, but are on the consent calendar. The reason that they are placed on consent is the selectmen believe that they are relatively non-controversial or routine in nature and may be voted together to expedite the business of town meeting. I will first read the consent motion and then discuss the procedure for handling the consent agenda. So, to put the motion in play, Ms. Adachi moves that the town take up the 11 articles in the consent calendar on pages 51 through 61 of the warrant. Articles 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25, not including Articles 13 and 15. Do I have a second? So the procedure we will follow, it's similar to the way we did the Community Preservation Act last night, is I'll read the number and title of each consent article. If someone wishes to hold the article from consent, they need to say hold in a relatively loud voice. If 2 or more say hold, then the article will be held from consent and discussed and voted separately. First, we'll vote on the articles that remain on the consent agenda, then go back and discuss any of the held articles. So I will now read the articles, and if you wish to hold them, please say so. Article 14, Fund Collective Bargaining Agreement Dispatch. Article 16, Fund Collective Bargaining Highway, Municipal Properties, and Cemetery, fiscal year 19. Article 17, Accept Legislation, Parking Meter Revenues and Expenses. I only heard 1 hold, so that's 2 holds, so that is held. Article 18, Commuter Lot and Station Maintenance. Article 19, Septage Disposal Enterprise Budget. Article 20, Transfer Station and Recycling Enterprise Budget. Article 21, Sewer Enterprise Budget. Article 22, Ambulance Enterprise Budget. Article 23, Transportation Enterprise Budget. Article 24, Amend General Bylaws Department Revolving Funds. Article 25, Self-Funding Programs Revolving Funds. Okay, one article, which is Article 17, has been held from consent. So we'll deal first with those that were not held. I believe this is a majority vote, right? So all those in favor of the articles on consent, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The motion carries unanimously. We will now deal with Article 17. The way I'd like to deal with this is if the person or persons who wanted to hold this will come to the microphone and either ask a question or offer a comment, and then we'll have the selectman who's responsible for that article respond or answer the question. Gentleman at microphone number 4.
Hi, yes, Kyle Coulter, 12 West Side Drive. I was reading through the warrant, and I just was curious as to where these off-street parking meters are going to be installed and how many of them.
Would defer that question to someone from DPW.
Or how about the town manager?
Or the town manager.
Mr. Ledoux.
These are for the meters at the train station parking lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? Seeing none, we will vote on the motion. I believe there's a separate motion for Article 17. Just to move the town accept the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40, Sections 22A, 22B, and 22C as amended. I have a second on that motion. Second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. We are now to Article 26. So we did get there. I will read the motion. This is Article 26, a non-binding resolution on the Great Road water supply. Ms. Green moves that the town adopt the non-binding resolution as set forth in the article. Do I have a second? Motion has been made and seconded. Ms. Green, I think by prior agreement, we agreed on 12 minutes, give or take, hopefully no more than that. You may proceed.
That would be close.
And I should also let town meeting members know that we will also be having a opposition presentation following Ms. Green's. What we'll do is hear the recommendations from the selectmen and the finance committee, and then hear Ms. Castens, who will be delivering an opposition presentation. But Ms. Green, you may proceed.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good evening, everyone. I'm here tonight to ask for your support for Article 26, a non-binding resolution supporting execution of an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Concord, committing Concord to continue supplying water to existing and future customers along its water main on Great Road. In 1884, the Massachusetts legislature authorized Concord to withdraw water from Nagog Pond, which lies within the boundaries of Acton and Littleton, while affirming Acton and Littleton's superior rights to the water if the towns need it. Since then, Concord has acquired 100 acres of land around Nagog Pond and built and maintained surface water supply infrastructure, including an ozone treatment facility and a water distribution line along Great Road. Concord has been withdrawing water from Nagog Pond since the early 1900s and received a registration from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection in 1991, authorizing water withdrawals from Nagog Pond at established historic withdrawal levels. In 2015, Concord applied to the Acton Board of Selectmen for a site plan special permit and use special permit to replace the ozone treatment facility with a state-of-the-art filtration and disinfection treatment plan to come into compliance with current drinking water treatment standards. The Board of Selectmen issued the special permits in March 2017. Concord appealed some of the conditions in the special permit to Land Court, and the Board of Selectmen will hold a hearing on a modified decision in probably late April or early May, which may lead to settlement of the litigation. If the modified decision is not approved, the litigation over the conditions in the permit will continue. Regardless of how litigation on the conditions is resolved, Concord will still have a special permit to construct and operate their treatment facility. The question before you tonight is not about Concord's treatment facility and whether or not that facility should be allowed. The question is about the proposed intermunicipal agreement requiring Concord to continue providing water service to existing and expanded customers along Route 2A. Even if town meeting votes down this article, Concord will still be able to build and operate its treatment facility at Nagog Pond and withdraw water from Nagog Pond. So this is a map showing the properties along Great Road currently served by Concord. The properties in yellow are the ones served by Concord's water main line. This includes Teamworks, the Trader Joe's Staples Plaza, and the Pedal Power Plaza, among others. Since 1909, Concord has been supplying water to these properties along its water main because the Acton Water District does not have a water main in this location. Due to the filtration avoidance waiver limiting their use of Nagog Pond, Concord has been providing these Acton customers water from groundwater wells located in Concord since the 1990s. While Concord has supplied water to these properties for over 100 years, they are under no documented obligation to do so, and they have already limited the size of new water connections for their customers along Great Road. This has limited the kind of development that can take place on these properties, including leading one developer to create a new housing development instead of his preferred option of new businesses, and requiring another developer to find an alternate connection to the Acton Water District, costing a lot more money and taking a lot more time. The Acton Water District has estimated that it would cost between $3.5 to $7 million to build a new water main to serve these customers. To provide the existing and future customers along Great Road a long-term water supply, and to give the Acton Water District sufficient time to plan for and build a new main to serve those customers, the Acton Board of Selectmen voted to enter into a long-term water supply agreement with Concord. The agreement will only take effect if town meeting approves this article. The agreement includes three major terms. One, Concord's commitment to continue to provide water to existing and future residential and commercial properties along their water main. Two, Acton's agreement to forbear seeking authorization to withdraw water from Nagog Pond during the term of the agreement. And three, a commitment by both Acton and Concord to coordinate with each other and with the Acton Water District on short and long-term water supply needs. The agreement will have an initial term of 20 years with one automatic 5-year extension unless the Acton Water District informs Concord and Acton at least 2 years prior to the end of the 20-year term that its existing groundwater well resources will not meet the reasonably foreseeable needs of its customers. During the period of this term, Concord will continue providing water service to the existing customers along its water main on Great Road, and will provide water service to new and expanded uses to the parcels in its service area up to a total of 61,000 gallons per day between the new and expanded uses. This number was reached based on a build-out analysis done by Acton's planning department to estimate potential water usage for these parcels. The agreement to provide water for expanded uses is contingent on Concord receiving authorization for any increased demand as required in any subsequent Water Management Act permit renewals. Concord also agrees to treat these customers the same as their customers in Concord. Under this agreement, Acton and the Acton Water District receive assurance that our residents and businesses along Great Road will continue to receive water service while we take the time to explore and execute the best way to provide water in this area for the long term. In exchange, the Acton Board of Selectmen will provide Concord assurance that it will not seek to assert our rights to the water in Nagog Pond during that time, or to actively support other actions that would constrain Concord's existing rights to withdraw water from Nagog Pond. Under this forbearance agreement, the Acton Board of Selectmen will not seek or support authorization from the Massachusetts Legislature, the Massachusetts DEP, or the judiciary to withdraw water from Nagog Pond or constrain Concord's rights to the water. However, the agreement specifically maintains our rights to the water and does not bind any other parties, including the Acton Water District, from pursuing those rights. Importantly, the Board of Selectmen can decide to pursue those rights at any time, with the understanding that doing so will give Concord the right to terminate the agreement. In addition, because the Acton Water District is not constrained in any way by this agreement, the Acton Water District can pursue those rights at any time. Finally, the towns of Acton and Concord agreed to participate in periodic meetings with the Acton Water District to discuss the short and long-term water supply needs of both communities and discuss mutual aid, assistance, and coordination issues. Acton can end its forbearance at any time for any reason. Concord can only terminate this agreement upon one of 4 events. 1, the Acton Board of Selectmen ends the forbearance agreement and pursues our rights to withdraw water from Nagog Pond. 2, legislation is otherwise introduced in the Massachusetts Legislature seeking authorization for Acton or Littleton to withdraw water from Nagog Pond or to modify the terms of the 1884 Acts giving Concord access to that water. 3, Acton or the Acton Water District applies for a Water Management Act permit from the Massachusetts DEP to withdraw water from Nagog Pond, or Littleton secures said permit. Or 4, Concord's water supply from Nagog Pond is materially compromised due to other statutory, regulatory, operational, environmental, or acting zoning or general bylaw changes. In the event of any of these actions, Concord has the option to terminate this agreement with written notice, but the termination must be at least 1 year from the triggering event. That 1-year notice period is not a deadline by which the Acton Water District must complete construction of its own water main to this area. It is effectively a notice period that Acton currently does not have. At the end of it, the parties are in the same position that they are in right now. So why did the Board of Selectmen think it is beneficial to enter into this intermunicipal agreement with Concord, especially if Concord has already been providing water to these customers for over a century? While Concord has been supplying this water for a long time, they are under no documented legal obligation to continue to do so. If they were to give notice that they are planning to stop providing that water, we believe that the DEP or the judiciary would prevent them from cutting off the supply immediately, but we would have to spend resources to enforce that and would likely require the Acton Water District to quickly build infrastructure to serve those customers or come up with some other agreement with Concord to continue providing that service. Concord has also already placed limits on the amount of water it will provide to the customers along Great Road. This has limited the kind of development that can happen in that area and in some cases has led to more housing in areas where Acton has wanted to encourage more commercial development. While this may also seem like a small number of properties that Concord is serving, the value is not in the volume of water provided, but in providing water in that area, period. For Acton to provide water to these customers will take a lot of time, planning, and money to get that infrastructure in place. The Board of Selectmen wants to provide a reliable water supply to these customers while giving the Acton Water District the time to determine the best way to provide water in this area in the future and to build the required infrastructure if needed. In exchange, the board agreed not to actively pursue our rights to the water in Nagog Pond. The Acton Water District has expressed that they do not have an immediate need for that water and that they would most likely look to other sources of water before pursuing any legislative or legal actions to withdraw water from Nagog Pond. They have also indicated that if they did want to withdraw water from Nagog Pond in the future, they would likely look to come to an agreement with Concord to access water treated at Concord's treatment facility, as otherwise they would have to build a similar treatment facility and other related infrastructure. If, however, the town or the Acton Water District determines that it would be in our best interest to access the water in Nagog Pond during the term of the agreement, we could still do so. Doing that would just serve as a triggering event, which would require Concord to give us at least 1 year's notice before terminating this agreement. Having this agreement in place would, at the very least, provide the Acton Water District with additional time to come up with a plan to provide water to this area of Acton. The board also feels that it would not be in the town's interest to seek to exercise our rights to Nagog Pond under the 1884 Act unless and until we have a demonstrated need for that water. The act reads in part, "Nothing contained in this act shall prevent the town of Acton nor the town of Littleton from taking the waters of said Nagog Pond whenever said towns or either of them may require the same for similar purposes." The board is concerned that if the town looks to exercise its rights before demonstrating that it may require the waters of Nagog Pond, the legislature or other regulatory bodies may make it more difficult for Acton to act on those rights. Nothing in this agreement, however, changes our existing rights to that water, and so we would not be altering our current status or giving up any of our rights. Instead, we would just not seek to exercise those rights until we needed them. We are also not prevented from working with our legislators and state agencies to understand the process if and when we do want to exercise those rights. And Acton and the Acton Water District could also work with Concord to come to an agreement for providing access to the treated waters of Nagog Pond for emergency or even long-term service while still keeping this agreement in place. In summary, this agreement gives us time. It gives us time to determine how to best serve the residents and businesses in Concord's water service area along Great Road. It gives us time to determine how we might want to access the water in Nagog Pond. And it gives us time to work collaboratively with the Acton Water District and the town of Concord to discuss our long-term water supply needs and opportunities to work together. For these reasons, the Acton Board of Selectmen unanimously voted to enter into this intermunicipal agreement, and we unanimously voted to recommend Article 26. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Before we get to the opposition presentation, I'll ask for the Finance Committee's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Finance Committee has no recommendation to make on this article.
Thank you. By prior agreement, I believe Ms. Castens, you're going to come forward and give a 6 minutes or thereabouts presentation. And if you would start by introducing yourself to town meeting members, I would appreciate it. Oh, you need to hit the button on the mic. There you go.
Good evening. You hear me? Yes. Okay, I am Kim Castens. I live at 294 Pope Road, and I'm speaking for myself and for Green Acton in opposition to giving up our opportunity to exercise Acton's rights.
Point of order? Oh, can we, the timer's at 6, but it hasn't started. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm speaking in opposition to giving up the opportunity to exercise Acton's rights to the waters of Nagog Pond for 20 to 25 years, and in support of a regional and equitable solution to sharing Nagog Pond water, as was voted for 1 year ago at 2017 town meeting. The first problem with this agreement is the forbearance agreement, under which the Acton Board of Selectmen agrees to forego for 20 to 25 years from taking steps towards either exercising our own rights to the waters of Nagog Pond or constraining Concord's rights to take the water from Nagog Pond. Although we may have no immediate need for this water, we may very well have a need for this water within 20 to 25 years, which is a long time. Our water situation in Acton is fragile. We get our water from shallow water wells, shown by triangles on the map. They're only a few tens of feet deep. They're vulnerable to drought, vulnerable to pollution, and they're already threatened by plumes of a carcinogenic material, 1,4-dioxane, flowing out of the Superfund sites towards our most productive well, the Assabet well field. Even if there were no catastrophic failure due to pollution or another reason, we're still running up against potential shortfalls of water. We're going to be looking at a graph here showing water needs in Acton in the future. The vertical axis is millions of gallons per day. 1 million gallons is about 1.5 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of water. The blue line shows how how much water Acton is using now, 1.7 million gallons per day. The red line is how much we're allowed to use by the state. The Water Resources Advisory Committee, also called RAC, has presented to the Board of Selectmen estimates of how much additional water supply there could be from additional development, looking at many different development sources, including additional development called for under the Acton 2020 plan, the Technology District build-out, which is the W.R. Grace site, additional 40B sites, and full build-out, which would be building on all of the buildable land. And together or individually, each of these adds additional water supply far beyond that we're now equipped for. So in this situation with potential threats to our water quality and strains on our water quantity, it's foolish to enter into an agreement where we're cutting off our access to one of our best fallback supplies of water, not a groundwater source, but a surface water source, which is Nagog Pond. And in return, Concord is agreeing to continue to provide water to the customers along Great Road. It's the ones shown in pink on this map of Acton, goes from the Concord town line up to approximately Donnellan. However, the amount of water is capped at 61,000 gallons per day, which is approximately 4% of the total capacity of the expanded water treatment plant that Concord has proposed to build at Nagog Pond. And even that we might not be able to continue because of these termination events and triggering events that are in this plan. So a triggering event allows Concord to terminate the agreement, including the obligation to provide water along Great Road. There are no comparable triggering events under which Acton can terminate the agreement. And an example of what a triggering event would constitute would be if legislation is introduced seeking authorization for either Acton or Littleton to seek to withdraw water from Nagog Pond. So Littleton, what is Littleton doing in here? They're not a party to this agreement. We in Acton have no control over what Littleton does, and yet an action taken by somebody over whom we have no control would be a triggering event and allow the water to be cut off along Great Road. So this Article 26, this agreement, is for an allocation of water, 4% to Acton, 96% to Concord, not the equitable arrangement that was called for in last year's town meeting. But it could be worse if a triggering event occurs, then we're looking at a 100% allocation to Concord, 0% to Acton, and still 0% to Littleton. This is not what we voted for last year. Last year, at town meeting, we voted for Article 27, resolved that town meeting requests the Board of Selectmen to engage with the towns of Littleton and Concord, the Acton Water District, and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to reach an accord on equitable access to water from Nagog Pond. This is not that accord, the agreement that's in front of us tonight. Instead, please, townspeople, vote against Article 26, and please, Board of Selectmen, go back and negotiate for something more like this, a smaller total take within the limits of the ecosystem, and a more equitable agreement amongst the 3 towns that all have legal rights to water from Nagog Pond.
Thank you. Now, please try not to have applause, please. We'll now open it up for debate. This is a non-binding resolution. I understand that it is a controversial article, but it is non-binding, and it has been our practice to limit debate to roughly 30 minutes if possible. I will see how the debate is going after 30 minutes. We may have many speakers who wish to speak at that point, and we may be ready to vote. We will see. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 4. Number 4, please. I know, I'm talking to the people up there.
Okay, thanks. Catherine Black, Central Street. I'm a little confused that this is a non-binding resolution that is presented to us as being legally binding on Concord. Huh? How can we vote on something that binds Concord? Is Concord voting on something like this?
Ms. Green?
Sure, thank you. So the Acton Board of Selectmen and the Concord Board of Selectmen have both voted to enter into this agreement. So Concord has already approved this agreement. The Acton Board of Selectmen actually could vote to enter into this agreement on our own, but due to the nature of the articles at the previous year's town meeting, and because it would have some binding effects on our ability to pursue or exercise our rights as a town, we felt that it made sense to bring it back to bring this to town meeting on Acton's side. So this does not have to go to the Concord town meeting. And again, the town of Concord has already voted to approve this intermunicipal agreement. So both of us have approved the intermunicipal agreement. There's just a section in there that says it only becomes effective if Article 26 is approved tonight.
Okay, I'm still a little confused about the non-binding bit.
Yeah, that was how we were advised to approach the article by our legal counsel.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
Alan Nitschelm. So I'm a little confused by this, and I guess I'm asking for a response from both the pro and the con presenters. So the pro presenter, Katie, you said that Acton can terminate this at any time, and the con presenter said Acton can't terminate this. They're locked in for 20 years. So I'm trying to understand how those two differing facts mesh together.
Katie, I'll recognize you first, and then Ms. Castens.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So I think the confusion is that there are some specific triggering events for Concord in the agreement. So those were the 4 that I had laid out. So Concord is only allowed to trigger the end of this agreement or to terminate this agreement if one of those 4 triggering events happened. But Acton essentially could choose to trigger those events at any time. So if we want to exercise our rights, we can do so at any time. We just know that it's knowing that it's a triggering event, and Concord would have the option at that point, if they wanted to terminate the agreement with at least 1 year's notice. So there's no specific triggering event for Acton. We choose when we want to trigger those events, if that makes sense.
Ms. Castens, do you have a different view?
I have a couple more things to add. First of all, while it is true that Acton could initiate a triggering event, Concord shall have the option to terminate this agreement. It says Concord shall have the option. So in other words, Acton were to take this pathway of, let's say, stopping with forbearing. That would be a triggering event, but Concord doesn't have to terminate if they don't want to. It says Concord shall have the option. And let me also say that I really don't think we should be entering into agreements that we don't fully intend to hold up our end of the bargain. I really don't think it's appropriate for me as an individual or us as a town to enter into agreements assuming that any old time we don't like it, we just walk away from it. If we're going to promise to do something, which we're promising to do things in this agreement. If we're going to promise to do something, we should be promising to do things that we fully intend to hold up our end of the bargain for the full length of time. We shouldn't, it weakens the whole fabric of society for us to just enter into agreements and say, oh, we can just walk away from it at any moment. I'd rather not do that.
Okay,
Please, no applause, not while we're having debate.
So I think let me just see if I can clarify this one more time. So it sounds to me like it's a good deal for Acton because Acton can terminate it if it wants to, but Concord can't. Acton is not going to terminate it unless it decides it wants the water. And if Concord decides to terminate it, they could terminate it right now by just, they can't terminate it, but if there's a triggering event, they could terminate it. So I think what makes people queasy about what they're hearing is that it's almost like there's something being held over our heads. Like if we terminate something or if something happens, they're going to cut off the water supply. And I guess my question then is, with this uncertainty, it would seem like it would be smart for us to be investigating how to take that potential threat off the table, because that seems a little, icky, like we shouldn't be, living in that way that at any moment they could just cut off the water supply.
Ms. Green, I think there was a question there.
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah, so all I'll say is that right now, there's a threat that they could cut off the water supply. There's no obligation for Concord to supply that water now. So the view of the Board of Selectmen is that we want to have time to, as you said, sort of take that option off the table and to figure out how do we provide water to these residences and businesses where we can't right now. And so entering this agreement gives us the time and the ability to do that, because right now, if we don't approve this article and the agreement doesn't take effect, tomorrow Concord could notify us that they are going to stop supplying water. And so we want to enter into an agreement so that we have Concord has agreed to provide that water, and even if it just gives us 2 days before something happens that one of the triggering events occurs, then we get 2 days plus at least 1 year. And so it's more time than we have now, and it gives us a time to more thoughtfully plan for how to serve this area of Acton and to take that so-called threat off the table.
Okay, thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2. No, the question was posed to Ms. Green. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Hi, my name is Barry Rosen, Windermere Drive, Acton. Nagog Pond, I'm going to speak a little bit about just the rights. I'm going to restrict this just a little bit about the Act of 1884. Nagog Pond is a pond that is designated as a great pond by the Commonwealth. All great ponds in the state are owned by the state. The rights to the waters of Nagog Pond, a great pond owned by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, was established by an act of the General Court of the Commonwealth in 1884. This act was passed prior to the establishment of the Water Supply District of Acton, which came into existence in 1912. The act states that the towns of Acton, Littleton, where most of the pond lies, and Concord have a right to take and use the waters of Nagog Pond. In fact, the act is very clear in stating that the towns of Acton and Littleton have preemptory rights to the waters over the town of Concord. This simply means that if Acton and or Littleton want to use the waters of Nagog Pond, they get first crack at it. Even if Concord is already using the pond, Acton has the right to say that it may need to take some water for its own use. As this is a preemptory right, it could cause the state to reduce the amount of water that Concord is taking by the amount that Acton may want to take. The same holds true if Littleton should ask to take water. This sounds simple enough, but it's really not. There is a Section 10 in the legislation, which of course we'd like to see struck, which essentially says that if Acton asserts its right to the waters of Nagog Pond and the state reduces what Concord is permitted to pump, Acton may have to indemnify Concord for its loss. Indemnify is a legal term meaning to compensate for loss or damage, according to West's Encyclopedia of American Law, or it's a give back, according to Burton's Legal Thesaurus. This loss could mean many things, including some value of its water treatment plant, the cost of drilling and permitting additional water wells in Acton, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, the attorney's fees would be added to the costs. So what this says is that the longer that Acton waits to take any action, the more that it will cost all of us, potentially much more. The problem with all this is that discussions and negotiations over Nagog's waters have never taken place. Finally, neither the town of Acton nor the Acton Water District have a long-range plan that looks forward 15 to 20 years. The Acton Water District's planning horizon is their statutory 5-year plan. We are being asked not to assert our water rights for 20 to 25 years. I would urge you to think about voting no on Article 26 and urge our Board of Select Persons to do what they were asked to do at our April 2017 town meeting, where you, the legislature, unanimously passed 3 warrant articles, number 26, 27, and 28, asking to 1, perform a water resources study, 2, to have water resource sharing discussions with Littleton and Concord about Nagog Pond, and 3, to affirm Acton's right to Nagog Pond's waters. You are Acton's legislature. I will ask you to please vote to take action and vote no.
I recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
I'm one of the three. I'm Steve Stunts, 27 Central Street. I'm one of the 3 Acton water commissioners. The Acton Water District voted unanimously to support this article. 2 years ago, when we were approached by the selectmen to comment on the permit, we had 3 items that we thought were important for this treatment plant to be useful to the town. They were to supply the present users, to have rapid hookup, emergency hookups, and to enter into a long-term agreement about how we would share water. This agreement meets those 3. When we saw the first draft of the agreement, we were a little surprised at the 20 to 25 year because we had never discussed that time. Our planning cycle is a 5-year engineered plan for what the use will be. And in that plan, we have a list of potential water sources that go much further out. Nagog Pond, quite honestly, is 4th or 5th on that list in terms of what we will investigate as we need to. The other thing we all need to remember is that the choice is not ours. The choice is the regulators. How much water we draw from the ground or from Nagog Pond is determined by the regulators based on information they have, and the process and where we take it from is very important, and they will tell us how much we can take and when we can take it. And to go through that process is long, expensive, time-consuming, and thorough. So we recommend passage. I also want to take a minute to thank our retiring water commissioner, Len Phillips, who spent over 30 years as a commissioner and even more time on planning boards and others, and he will be leaving the board at our next meeting, so I just wanted to thank him for his years of service. Thank you very much.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Yes, Dr. John Lute, Briar Hill Road. I must say that I'm at a beginning, if you will, of understanding some of the complexities being addressed in what I think most of us would agree is a complex issue, and I do appreciate the comments made from the original legislation. One of my primary concerns is, in the beginning of this study, is the 1,4-dioxane influence, which the Water District is dealing with, and I went to the recent meeting about that. Yes, it's being well analyzed. Yes, its potential carcinogenic effect is not clearly delineated, but is of concern. And as increased flow is required, perhaps the current methods of, I believe, UV dealing with it may not be as effective as possible. While I very much respect those entities which are dealing with this, I continue to have concern for the future, the unknown, this new potential entity, the shallowness of the wells that we're dealing with, and other environmental factors which can be debated scientifically, but global warming and other things may well be out there in the future. 20, 25 years is a long time. I therefore have concern with respect to moving forward with this. I'm struggling with that decision that has, I think, many people tonight concerned, but particularly for the science involved, I would say I'm questioning no on this, and we'll continue to listen carefully to the debate. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
Yes, Mike Gowen, 93 Harris Street. I have 2 questions. One is, is there a legal right? This usage has gone on for 100 years. What's the implication of them just terminating it because they want to force our hand to do something, which is what this feels like? And the second question is geared around the Acton Water District. They have not partnered well with the town of Acton in the past. And so therefore, there's kind of an implicit distrust. And I specifically talking about W.R. Grace and the settlement that they made there. And we had monitoring wells that the town wanted to maintain or continue, and they wouldn't join us in a lawsuit against the DEP because they didn't want to spend the money. So I have concerns that this is not going to bind them at all, and they're responsible for the water supply of Acton, not town of Acton. So I don't see a real commitment on their part to do anything, and that concerns me. Finally, with intermunicipal agreements, as we have with fire and many other things, you have a situation where, if, well, we need fire assistance, they'll send fire trucks, and we send fire trucks to their community. If water becomes a problem, it becomes a problem across the region. We only have one aquifer, so therefore we would have a problem. So we don't want to give away the rights to that, and I think 20 years in this agreement is way too long, way too long. Thank you.
Ms. Green, I think there was a question there.
I think so. So just one to, again, we're not giving away our rights. And again, the intermunicipal agreement reaffirms our rights to access Nagog Pond. And then I'll address your question about our cooperation with the Acton Water District. Again, one of the provisions in the agreement is that the Acton Water District, the town of Concord, and the town of Acton would have periodic conversations and discussions about long-term planning and other issues. Throughout this process, you know, one of the upsides has been more coordination discussions with the Acton Water District, and we are hopeful, particularly when we are this agreement and the litigation is settled, that we will be in a better place to continue having those discussions. And it seems that at this time everybody's willing now to come to the table and have those. I think there's a lot more interest in doing that. And in terms of your legal question, I might ask our counsel if that's okay with you, Mr. Moderator.
Certainly. Is he a, well, let's see. Is he a resident of Acton?
He is not. We can vote him.
Part of town staff?
I think so. I mean, we pay him.
He's special counsel. I guess he can speak then, if he's special.
He's very special.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Roloffs, and I have been acting as special counsel to the selectman and town manager through the course of the Nagog Pond special permit process. I guess I would ask first for the legal question. Can you just clarify for me what the question is that you're looking for an answer on?
You may go to microphone number 1, please.
Yes, it's been in place for 100 years, 105 years. Is there any legal implication that they have to maintain it until we had something else in place?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my view is that if Concord were to send us notice tomorrow that they are going to terminate service on Route 2A, that they might have a difficult time doing that, but it would put us into a position where we would have to go to the DEP, the state regulators, and probably to court to defend, to argue the point that they've got a legal obligation to continue the existing service, at least as long as it takes for us to design an alternative, get that alternative permitted and funded, and actually construct it. So it would set up a legal process and a lot of other proceedings in order to secure the water supply to existing users. I also don't have a lot of confidence that during that period we would be able to get the DEP or the court to require Concord to provide water to new users who aren't there currently. So if that's a 2 or 3 year process to design, permit, and build, you know, there's I think a legitimate question as to whether or not any new services would be provided by Concord.
I recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Thank you. My name's Ron Beck, 80 Esterbrook Road. I've lived in Acton beginning 40 years ago, but for the last 18 years continuously. Article 26 is a very bad agreement for the town of Acton, and I urge citizens to vote against it. I'm going to give you 6 reasons, and I'm going to restrict my comments to the pollutant risks that and costs that this presents. I'm an environmental scientist with a degree in environmental science from Princeton University. I had 10 years' experience as working on water quality projects and authored or co-authored several studies, including those for the EPA, Bureau of Land Management, Geological Survey, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and Council on Environmental Quality on the local and federal level. It's on that basis that I've evaluated this proposed agreement. I specifically have looked at the organic pollutants and their health impacts on drinking water, and in the past was responsible for evaluating the entire national water quality data repository. I'm going to make my comments on the risks of pollutants endangering or closing several of Acton's critical public water supply wells and why this leads me to oppose Article 26. Such risks are real and significant. The presenter talked about time. Time is the enemy here. Most important, no assessment of these risks has been done by any of the town departments, nor have the Board of Selectmen requested such a risk assessment before proposing to enter into this agreement. Such a risk assessment, I'm quite confident, would have led the Board of Selectmen to realize they should never support such an agreement, which restricts the town's water options drastically. Understanding these risks, it's highly irresponsible for the town to enter into an agreement that would force us not to pursue our main fallback clean water source for another 20 years. Here are the 6 key facts. The Grace Chemical Superfund site is in close proximity to Acton's important Assabet well field. While the Grace site's been under cleanup for the past 40 years, recently plumes of 1,4-dioxane have been identified that continue to travel beyond the Grace site and toward our operating Assabet supply wells. This should give all voters pause to understand that pollutants identified several decades ago and with large sums of money and scrutiny applied still cannot be totally contained and safely kept away from our supply wells. 2, the Nuclear Metal Inc. Superfund site, just over the border of Acton and Concord, also produced a plume of 1,4-dioxane that is currently releasing elevated levels of a known carcinogen into a currently used public water supply well. EPA's contractor is working to control those levels, but they are currently entering our public water supply and are being controlled by mixing this pollutant with a cleaner well to keep levels delivered to the public just below federal and state recommended levels. What should give voters pause and make clear the uncertain risks is that everybody involved was assured such a plume could not reach our well field from the nuclear metals site. It did, to the complete surprise of the Water District, EPA, and the contractors.
Sir, you've been going for over 3 minutes now. I'd ask you to wrap up your comments, please.
Okay. There are also radioactive isotopes at that site that could reach our well fields in maybe estimated 30 to 50 years. Also, according to the state of Massachusetts data, there are 82 other registered sources of hazardous substances within the town of Acton. Some of these are close to well fields. 4th, most of our producing well fields are close to the borders with surrounding towns such as Concord, Maynard, and Littleton, so our ability to manage these pollutants on our wells is not within our control. 5th, we have no long-term management and plan in place to understand disposal of pharmaceuticals in individual septic tanks, many of which are in aquifers zone 2 or 3 areas. They're extremely difficult to measure. And 6th, with a relatively tight margin today between our water demand and supply, as shown by the con presenter, there's a risk of, there's not much room for shutting down wells. So in sum of all of that, Article 26 presents us with very significant risk, certainly much sooner than 20 years from now, and probably within the next 5 to 10 years. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
John Richards, 72 Skyline Drive. I encourage the town meeting to approve this article for the following reasons. The proposed Acton-Concord agreement is not perfect, but it provides Acton with an assurance of water supply along Route 2A that it currently does not have. It does not remove Acton's right to petition the state, to exercise its right to withdraw water from Nugog Pond at any time. Terminating any agreement is perfectly legitimate. It simply means that if Acton were to exercise its right within the forbearance period, it would have to plan to provide water to some homes and businesses on Route 2A. As we've heard, this is no different from the current situation. If Acton wished to obtain water from Nugog Pond, it would have to purchase pondside land, build access roads, clear woodland, and construct a similar facility to Concord's. A far more practical alternative would be to negotiate with Concord to obtain water treated at their Nagog Pond facility. This agreement would encourage such negotiation early rather than later. So I believe that this agreement is to the benefit of Acton, with, as far as I can see, no downsides. I urge you to support this article. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Yes, hello. My name is Lucy Kirshner, and I live at 35 Parker Street. And I really appreciate legal agreements that work to protect people or towns that are vulnerable. So I studied this, and yet I cannot give a vote yes for this agreement, as I see vulnerabilities, real vulnerabilities in our town's water supply, and I do not believe this agreement protects us. In fact, I believe it makes us more vulnerable in some ways. More vulnerable water-wise, but also the integrity of our town becomes more vulnerable. First of all, it doesn't really protect our citizens along Route 2A who've been receiving water in good faith from Concord for more than 100 years. Instead, it's offering these several triggers that open the possibility that their vulnerability will grow. Some might say it protects Acton, as Acton aims for a certain amount of development along the Concord water route, but every bit of development will be subject to Concord's approval and subject to the triggers that have been outlined. We've also been told repeatedly, as if it's a comfort, that should one of the triggering events occur, it will only bring us back to exactly where we are today. But that's not a comfort for me, and it also doesn't seem to be true, because if we do pass this agreement tonight, we will, as a town, be giving our understanding and our approval of the triggering events and their consequences. We'll be accepting Concord's option at such an event to terminate the agreement after just 1 year. Then after that time, Concord can refuse to supply water to the customers in Acton. And if we've signed this agreement, we'll be party to that consequence. We shouldn't anticipate triggering events with equanimity. Whether today or in years to come, if and when Concord refuses to supply water to these 2A properties, our town will have to respond to immediately, sort of the way that's been described, going to the EPA and going to the state. And this will take longer than 1 year to get this through, longer, and yet we'll still be rushed to be able to get the infrastructure ready to provide water on our own to that area. So the protection that I'm looking for is a regional approach to long-term planning for water needs. The agreement we're considering today does include a commitment titled Regional Planning Coordination, but it's weak in that it is just between Concord and Acton and doesn't include Littleton, who is written into this agreement. So I'm concerned that approving this agreement increases our water vulnerability and puts our town, for having signed the agreement, puts our town integrity at risk. So I will vote no.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1. Oh, I'm sorry. How about number 3?
Great. So that previous speaker made an excellent point. So I wanted to just ask it specifically to the attorney succinctly. So if we sign this agreement, do we make it easier for Concord to stop providing water on Route 2 if there's a triggering event versus not signing the agreement and then having it be nebulous and going to court and fighting it out, and maybe the water on Route 2 would be flowing for years? Does this put a time limit on when they can terminate it, which would be the threat that everyone's afraid of? You follow what I'm asking?
I do, Mr.
Special
Moderator.
Counsel?
Thank you. I think the way I view this, and we're very careful about the way we wrote this agreement, so that at the end of that 1-year period, we are in the same position we are now. So if there are existing legal obligations on Concord to continue supplying water to the existing users that it's been supplying water to, those same arguments will exist at the end of that 1-year period. The 1-year period is written in here. The termination provision is clear that they have an option to terminate the obligations under this agreement, to terminate the agreement. If they have other legal, regulatory, or legal obligations to continue supplying water to those users, we're going to still be able to make those arguments, just like we would be making them next week if we got notice of termination. So what it buys us is a one-year period, and it was really intended to be a placeholder, not to extinguish or constrain any legal rights that we may have, that Acton may have, or the existing users may have currently.
Okay.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Carolyn Kiley, Parkland Lane. I'd like to discuss further this whole option to terminate and who has the option. As Ms. Caston said, it's Concord that has the option to terminate. It's page 9, termination triggering events. There is absolutely nothing in this agreement that allows Acton to terminate. And think of it from a practical perspective. If Acton does any of those 4 things to trigger this option to terminate, we've still entered into a contract with Concord. This is a contract that says we won't access water from Nagog Pond for 20 to 25 years. Why would Concord terminate this agreement? As long as this agreement is in effect, even if Acton does something to trigger, Concord's not going to give it up, because then that would allow Acton to get water to Nagog Pond. In practicality, this is an ironclad 20-year contract. The other thing that no one has said at all is that this agreement requires Concord's approval of every building permit along Route 2A, this stretch. And it binds the selectmen to change our zoning bylaws so that before our town staff can issue a building permit for any of these properties that was shown on that map, Concord has to approve in writing the issuance of that building permit. It's appalling to give approval of Acton town zoning issues and rules to Concord, and that's exactly what this does. And then the other thing that you said, that this doesn't apply to the Acton Water District. Well, it does apply to the Acton Water District. The agreement specifically states that if, it's on page 6, if the Acton Water District determines that it needs water from Nagog Pond, it needs to wait to the end of the 20-year term to do that. All the Acton Water District can do is claim that they need water, meaning that the 5-year extension will not kick in. That's on page 6. And on page 8, what the Acton Water District can do is they can request water sharing with Concord. That binds the Acton Water District into what they can do. Whether or not they're a signatory on this, the Acton Water District, the provisions in here apply to them. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Turn this on.
Oh,
There it is.
it
Yes,
happens
I'm-
automatically.
Yes, great. I'm Marilyn Miller. I lived at Nagog Woods from 82 to 86, and I've lived at 5 Patrick Henry Circle, West Acton since. And this is a legal question. I have a great interest in this issue. But I was referred to Cheryl Ball, our head of the health department, and I said, can someone just shut off water in Massachusetts? And I'm citing her, but she says no. Under Housing Code, quote, I'm not a lawyer, 105 CMR 410-180, it's in regard if someone isn't paying their bill. Like I know in Detroit, Michigan, they've started shutting off water to people who don't pay. But in Massachusetts, if a public water line goes by your business or home, well, this is quoting her, they must provide it. Yeah, the director, Cheryl Ball. An owner may not shut off or refuse water service to an occupant on the basis that the occupant has not paid a separately assessed usage charge. Now, that's a different case in the sense that it's a non-payment of a bill, but does that have any, because it's a health issue, you know, public health, you're drinking and you're washing, she cited it that way. As a retired physician, I know about a lot of things related to health care, and in health, when we're on call at a hospital emergency room as a consultant, One must take care of a patient if they have an injury that threatens life, limb, or eyesight. So I sort of think that may be germane to our considerations, or does our council think no?
Wish to have council respond to that?
Sure, I will have council respond, but real quick, again, as I said in my presentation, we don't believe that Concord would be able to turn off the water tomorrow if they notified us that they were going to stop providing service, but we do believe that we would have to go to, court and probably the DEP to force them to continue providing it until the Acton Water District can provide it, and we think that the Acton Water District would have to expedite the process to provide that water. So I'll let council fill in a little bit more.
Council?
Thank you. Yeah, like I said, I do think there are some strong legal arguments that could be made. That Concord cannot just turn off the valve whenever it decides it wants to. But that's different, and I think that we'd be able to convince a court and the regulators to require them to continue service to existing users for a reasonable period of time to allow us the opportunity, the Acton Water District, really the opportunity to plan, design, permit, and build its own infrastructure so it can provide water out there. But under the 1884 Act, although Concord's authorized to provide water off of its main in Acton, it is not obligated by that act to do so. And also in the regulatory world, the DEP permits that Concord has do not require it to provide water to Acton residents along that main.
Thank you.
We've been at this now for about 40 minutes in terms of debate, and I see a number of people still at the con microphones, not very many at the pro. I will recognize one or two more speakers, and then I think it will probably be time to vote. But I'll recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Thank you. Deborah Symes, Concord Road, but I'm speaking as president of Green Acton on behalf of the organization, and I'll do it really fast. Article 26 would prevent Acton from exercising its priority rights to the waters of Nagog Pond for between 20 and 25 years, prevent Acton from even taking steps to explore exercising its water rights in the future, prevent Acton from limiting Concord's water withdrawals from Nagog Pond, and contractually cap the amount of future water that Concord will be obligated to supply along Route 2A. These provisions are in violation of the non-binding resolutions passed at 2017 town meeting, directing Acton to explore a regional solution to utilizing Nagog Pond as a drinking water source. Because Article 26 severely limits Acton's future water sources at a time of water vulnerability, with little benefit town-wide, and is in contravention of the direction for regionalization provided at last year's town meeting, Green Acton urges Acton citizens to vote no on Article 26. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
I call the previous question.
Have a second? Takes a 2/3 vote to cut off debate. All those in favor of cutting off debate, please say aye. All those opposed say nay. Nay. Debate is cut off, and we will vote. I think this is one, even though it's a majority vote, that I think I would like to take just right off the top by electronic means. So if everyone will pull out their clickers. And turn them on by pushing the orange button, please. Everyone have them on? Okay, I will remind you, if you wish to vote yes for the resolution, press A. No is the E button, and I declare the voting window is now open. And the voting window has closed. And we will wait for the result here shortly. The motion has failed. Please, no applause. We will now move to Article 28, which is another non-binding resolution with regard to investigating the cost of buying the Kmart parcels. We have the motion, please. Ms. Fredericks moves that the town adopt the non-binding resolution as set forth in the article. Do I have a second? Motion has been made and seconded. Ms. Fredericks, I believe when we discussed this at the pre-meeting, you said you would take no more than 8 minutes, so you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Moderator and Mr. Moderator, and thank you for helping us with the process for petitions to alter government as provided for under the state constitution. So, next slide, please. Oh, should we read it or? Oh, okay. So this is a non-binding resolution to ask the Board of Selectmen to get an appraisal of the Kmart parcels. What does this article not do? Direct the Board of Selectmen to buy the Kmart parcels. This article is only to get information. So I don't know, do I change? Okay, here we go. Is this vote binding by law? These are frequently asked questions. Why bother? What will we do with the Kmart parcels anyway? What does it cost to get this information, and what is the timeline? Is this vote binding? No. The board can ignore this even if we vote for it. A yes vote is an indicator to the board whether we want to know how much the Kmart parcels would likely cost. Why bother? First of all, the developer that owns, or the owner of the Kmart parcels sits at a table and basically tells us what they're going to do to meet their profit requirements. So often I've seen at these meetings, they'll say, well, we don't want to do a 40B. We don't want to put hundreds of condos on this site, but we, kind of might have to if you don't do the rezoning and go down this path. So I feel like as a negotiator, you want to level the playing field. And one of the things that you could say if you got this appraisal information, when he says, oh, we don't want to have to do 40B, we can say, well, we don't want to have to do eminent domain. Not that we would. Maybe a lot of people do, because I'll get to that in a moment, because a lot of people are very excited by the idea of buying the Kmart parcels. But this petition is just to get the information. Also, it's important for the voters to understand the cost, if we do want to buy the Kmart parcels, what that might cost before going to rezone, taking the vote to rezone this fall. I didn't actually move on this petition until there was a decision by the Board of Selectmen to rezone again in the fall, or a vote to rezone with practically the same thing that we voted down already, with the idea that they were just going to educate people why it was better and hire a PR firm to show us why it was better. Okay, next slide, thank you. So why bother? The Stop and Shop developers committed to a largely residential development, while the Acton 2020 goal wants us to increase the amount of commercial and decrease the amount of residential tax base. The developer says he's unable to increase the percentage of commercial with or without zoning changes. So we might want to do something differently. Next slide, please. So this is the current plan by the developer. 154 largely luxury condos, a couple of large stores, one of it might be a gym, they've said lately, or 40B. Next slide, please. What would an appraisal cost? John Avery has told us in the range of 10 to 15,000, 45 to 60 days, with some staff time to verify the numbers and contact Kmart officially to see how long they may stay. I've heard that they are in the top 10 most profitable Kmarts. We're estimating that they pay about $80,000 a month. Net of taxes, that would be about $500,000 to us per year. But again, this petition is just to get the information on what the parcel's worth, not to explore the idea of buying it. The appraisal would cost $3 per household. Next slide. What would we do with the parcels? I only answer this because that's what everybody asks. We did a survey just to let people blow off steam and talk about what we do with the parcels. This is the most frequently asked question. So we did a survey, and here are some of the ideas. Public market, like a big, huge building where people have different, like Faneuil Hall, kind of. An event space, community center, shared office space, food courts, cafe, transit hub, hotel, park, or all the above. Next slide. So I did the survey, and the 9 questions, well, one of them was Acton, so 8 questions relative to what you want to do with it. And at the very end is the question, I want the town to buy the parcels if it is affordable or possible. And the answer, well, the answer on last Thursday was 76% yes, and 25, it's like 77% now. But interestingly enough, if you take out the, let me see my time, I have plenty of time. If you take out the answers that said no here in the blue, probably half of those, they answered no, they don't want to buy the parcels, but yes, they wanted a community center on the site. So I'm not sure how that logic works. Thank you. Next slide. So this is kind of what's going on. You vote yes, you get the information, work us towards what we want with either developer or potentially, if people really want to, buy the parcel. I don't know. This is not the vote tonight. The tonight is to get the information so that we can move towards the green area and away maybe from what we don't want. So next slide. Vote yes to take the first step in knowing what it will cost to get what we want. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the Board of Selectmen have a recommendation on this article?
The Board of Selectmen voted unanimously to make no recommendation on this citizens' article.
And the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee also has no recommendation on this warrant article. It was not a unanimous vote. There was a minority in favor of it. There was a minority opposed to it. But there was a small majority that voted no recommendation. Well, we're
trying to figure out the math on that.
That's new math, Mr. Roderick.
But we do support the goal of the motion to gain control of the parcel, but we did not reach consensus that this was the appropriate way to go about that.
Thank you. I'd like to.
Thank you.
Make
No,
a comment
no,
after that.
no,
Okay.
your time is up.
Somebody ask me what I think about
No,
that.
no, please, please.
Okay.
I will now open it up for debate. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Nope, I'm not on. There we go. Danny Factor, 11 Davis Road. I have to say, in all my years at town meeting, this is one of the easiest proposals I've ever heard of to vote yes on. Of course, the town wants to have information to make the most educated decision about what to do with the Kmart parcel, given the fact that Stop and Shop, which is the owner of the parcel, has made it clear that they do not want to renew the lease to Kmart. So we have a big decision to make in town, and we need all the information we can get. And to ask that we have an appraisal of the property is not committing us to anything. It's just providing us information, and I don't think we should ever deprive ourselves of information. So I think it's a reasonable vote to vote yes. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
I agree. And I will add, a $15,000 potential expense should not be that difficult for the Finance Committee to resolve.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Hi, Franny Osmond, Half Moon Hill. I think it's easy to get information, and I would like to get information. However, I sort of don't like the wording at the end. You know, we should do this so that we can get information, so that we can get what we want, because what I want is more housing and affordable housing and senior housing and mixed use and whatever, and I don't necessarily think the town owning it will get there faster. And so I don't want to make assumptions that I would want the town necessarily to own it. I want to figure out the best way to do that, and I was hoping the Kelly's Corner would be able to do that. So I don't want any assumptions about what we would do with the information, but I do agree that it's useful to have the information, and I share with you the frustration sometimes of hearing from developers what they can and cannot do and not having that information.
May I respond, Mr. Roderick?
I did not hear a question in there, so listening hard to hear a question, but I haven't heard one yet. I'll recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Knowledge is power, and this parcel has been identified for as long as I can remember as a key critical parcel involved in the Kelly's Corner controversy or discussion. So this is a low-cost piece of knowledge that will give us much better bargaining power and allow us to move forward with this process. I propose that we support this.
I recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Jensen Fellows from Neshoba Road. I'd like to move the question.
The question has been moved and seconded. All those in favor of cutting off debate, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Debate is cut off. We will now vote on the motion. This takes a majority. This is a non-binding resolution. All those in favor of the motion, please so indicate so by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Nay. I guess it's time to turn those clickers on again. Has everyone turned on their clickers? Okay. I'll remind everyone, if you want to vote yes, press A. And if you want to vote no, press E. I declare that the voting window is now open. I declare the voting window is closed, but we still have a battery issue over here, so we'll leave it open for a minute. Okay, I've now closed the voting window. Thank you.
Yay. And by the way, this is non-binding, so contact me. My contact information is
Excuse me, please. I first have to declare the result of the vote. The motion has carried.
Thank you. But this is non-binding, folks.
We will now move on to Article 29, which I believe Ms. Berry is going to give me a brief break here for an article or two. So I will let her handle this one.
All right, we're in the home stretch here. Article 29, transfer of real property at 3 to 33 Knox Trail does require a 2/3 vote to pass. Ms. Adachi moves that the town authorize the transfer of the real property shown as parcel 21-2 on Town of Acton Atlas Map J3, contingent upon completion of the tax title process from the tax title custodian to the Board of Selectmen for the purpose of conveyance and authorize the conveyance of that property as set forth in the article. Do I hear a second? Ms. Adachi, to your article.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. This is just a very small parcel. It is the subject of a tax taking that is still pending in land court. But once the town acquires title, we will be able to transfer it. The selectmen will be able to transfer it to a third party. The Acton Water District is interested in acquiring this. They acquired 16 Knox Trail parcel, I think, a few years ago via foreclosure. And Assabet Sand and Gravel used the property at 16 Knox Trail. And there's a pump station on the 3-33 Knox Trail parcel that the Sand and Gravel Company used to wash the gravel on the 16 Knox Trail parcel. And the pump station is on 3-33 is not in use anymore, but the supply line has been repurposed for purposes of dealing with the nuclear metal site 1,4-dioxane extraction. In any event, the Water District is interested in acquiring the parcel. It is assessed at $12,700. There's no need for bid solicitation between municipal entities, but there's also been no discussion yet between the town and the Water District about price, if any. So, and that's, the Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends approval of this article.
Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee recommends this article.
Are there any people wishing to speak to the article? Seeing none, or am I seeing somebody? Seeing none. This does require a 2/3 vote, so, oh, I'm sorry, sir, go ahead. Microphone 3. Microphone 3, please. Thank you.
Kyle Coulter, 12 West Side Drive. Seeing as seemingly the majority of town meeting has left the building, I move that we lay this motion on the table.
Is there a second to this motion? Seeing that there is not, we cannot, there was, I'm sorry. There is a second. It does require a 2/3? Oh, the second has been withdrawn? No, it was here too. Oh, and made again? Okie dokie. 2/3? Not debatable, 2/3. The motion is not debatable. It requires a 2/3 vote to lay the motion on the table, which would mean we would not discuss it or vote on it. So turn on your clickers, yes? I'd like to know why. That it's not debatable. Sorry. The motion is to lay the article on the table. Article 29 requires a 2/3 vote to do so. Turn on the clickers. Could we have the timing period? You may now vote whether to lay the motion on the table. That section seems to have the battery troubles. All set? May close voting now. The motion fails. We will move on to actually vote on the item unless there is anyone wishing to speak to the article. Seeing none, it does once again require a 2/3 vote to pass the transfer of real property at 3-33 Knox Trail. If we could have voting, are we set to have voting open again? Yes. Voting on the main article. Voting is now closed. The motion does carry by clearly more than 2/3. And I know it is disappointing to have such low attendance at this point, but to put it off to another time would not guarantee anymore, and we do not have a quorum requirement for this meeting. So our next article is Article 30, transfer of real property at 4 Cherry Ridge Road. This also requires a 2/3 majority. Ms. Green moves that the town authorize the transfer of the real property shown as parcel 36 on Town of Acton Atlas Map F1 from its current custodian to the Board of Selectmen for the purpose of conveyance and authorize the conveyance of that property as set forth in the article. Do I hear a second? Ms. Green, to your article.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Well, I don't think this is all right. There we go. Okay. So this article requests authorization to transfer the property at 4 Cherry Ridge Road to the Board of Selectmen for the purpose of conveying the property to a third party. Similar to the previous property that we discussed and voted on, the property is currently in the custody, well, this one's actually now in the custody of the town's tax title custodian, who's our town treasurer or finance director. It's a small 0.47 acre parcel zoned R2 that the town took ownership of in 1980 for back taxes. My understanding is that the lot had been used as a backyard by an owner who had a house on a lot on Juniper Ridge Road, and the owner sold the house lot and moved out of town and stopped paying taxes on the back lot, which is how the town came to take it. At last year's annual town meeting, we had requested permission to transfer this property for affordable housing purposes, but there were concerns that the site had not had a perk test recently. The town conducted a perk test in the summer of 2017, and the site successfully passed, meaning that a septic system can be built on this site. If the article is approved, the Board of Selectmen will release an RFP to sell the property to a third party. The board has discussed the parcel, and we support releasing an RFP that will allow for one house to be built on the lot with the requirement that the property be sold to a veteran. At least one local developer has already expressed an interest in this property for the purpose of building a house for a veteran. Approving the transfer of this property to the Board of Selectmen will bring this property back on the tax rolls and will provide a home for a veteran in town. With this in mind, the Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends Article 30. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee recommends this article.
Thank you. I'll now open it up to the members of the meeting. Speaker at microphone 3.
Hello, my name is Mark Starr, 22 Elm Street. I'm a 57-year resident of Acton and a 40-year builder of homes in the surrounding area. I only mention these things to hopefully add some credibility and to show that I am serious and that I know what I'm doing. My proposal would be, if I'm able to secure this lot, is something I've been trying to do for 10 years and unsuccessful in finding a piece of land, to build a home for a handicapped veteran family. Every single person that works for me on all the houses I've built recently has expressed an interest in providing free labor if it's for a handicapped veteran. That goes for accountants, lawyers, plumbers, electricians, framers, painters, you name it. I can get this house built with virtually free labor. Materials will be something else, but a lot of these people have said they'll go to their suppliers and try to get free materials also. This is the beginning of the process. I'm asking the town people of Acton to allow the selectmen to transfer this to a third party. Hopefully it will be me, and I'll be very happy to answer any and all questions about what my plans are. I have reached out to the neighborhood, have so far got nothing but positive results of reaching out to them, so I'm hoping that the town will authorize the selectmen to allow the lot to go to a third party. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker at microphone 1. Microphone 1, please. Could microphone 1 please be turned on? There we go.
Okay. My name is Nancy Vaccaro. I live at 3 Cherry Ridge Road, which is right across the street from that lot. And I know last year we did have a legitimate concern about the perk test. I have seen since then the new one that has been done, and I have talked with the speaker before me. And I do think that that proposal seems more economically feasible given the history of the lot, because it does have a lot of problems. And I think that it does need to go to someone who can actually get a lot of free help to make it economically feasible to get the size of property and building on that it should be done, because it really won't support a huge mansion. So I do support having it be somewhat like an affordable housing for a veteran. And I just want to make sure that there is a backup plan if something happens and that particular project falls through. So that would be my only concern, but I do support the motion.
Thank you. Seeing no other, oh, one more at microphone 1, go ahead.
Just a question. So I'm very much supportive of veterans with disabilities. My question is this deed restricting the parcel for reserving this house for a veteran with disabilities, or can they change their mind later and build it for anybody?
Ms. Green.
Sure. So the RFP that we would put out would require that it be built for and sold initially to a veteran. But my understanding is that we would not be allowed to deed restrict it in the future. So we can put kind of restrictions in the RFP to say what it has to be done with the property initially. But my understanding is we would not be allowed to put a deed restriction on it. If, say, the family that, buys it and is a veteran in 5, 10, however many years, sells it, I don't believe they'd be required to sell it to a veteran.
Microphone 1, please.
So I'm just going to say that if the neighbors are welcoming, then I would like to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker at microphone 3. Microphone 3, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just say that if I was able to do this, I would deed restrict it, that it would be only for a handicapped veteran, so that would stay that way.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, let's vote. Once again, does require a 2/3 majority to pass. Voting is now open. Voting period is now closed. The motion clearly passes by more than the 2/3 required. I will now turn the remainder of the meeting back over to Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. We're all getting our challenges in parliamentary procedure this evening, I can see. We'll move to Article 31, amendment to the general bylaws, remove the hearing requirement for enforcement. This requires a majority vote. Ms. Gardner moves that the town adopt the general bylaws amendment as set forth in the article. Do I hear a second? Motion has been made and seconded. Ms. Gardner? You may speak to your motion.
Presently, the animal control officer has to come and get a Board of Selectmen hearing in order to issue a citation, and this would permit the animal control officer to issue the citation without coming before the Board of Selectmen for a hearing. The Board of Selectmen supports this article.
Thank you. This Finance Committee?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Finance Committee supports this article.
Thank you. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
Alan Nitchell. So I'm not a dog owner, so I have no dog in this fight. But I do want to ask a question. So if we're obviously giving some type of power to a town official who doesn't currently have it, and my question is, can the owner who's fined appeal the fine to the Board of Selectmen, or what do they do if they want to contest it?
Ms. Gardner, I believe Town Council can answer that.
Under the general laws, chapter 140, any fines that are imposed can be appealed directly to district court. And this proposed amendment does not only deals with fines imposed under tickets. It does not deal with situations where a hearing is required by the selectmen for a finding, for instance, of a nuisance dog or a dangerous dog. That would still remain. So this is just for ticket enforcement of, for instance, violating leash laws, violating licensing, failing to license your dog. But the appeal route is directly for tickets, directly to district court, the same as it is for instance, zoning tickets.
And are these fines that would be levied on these owners, are they cumulative? In other words, you know, can they get fined day after day after day, that type of thing? And could this become, what is the monetary range of these fines?
Council?
I'd have to check the bylaw. I believe the fines for a failure to license your dog are limited to $50. And unlike zoning, they would not be cumulative by day, but rather, I believe, the failure to license would just be one ticket. Any incidents where a dog violates the leash law, every separate incident would be a separate ticket violation. So those would be, those would obviously be cumulative.
Okay.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Tara Fredericks, West Acton. How often does Town Hall currently place citations on dog friends or pet friends, animal friends? I don't like the word owners.
Ms. Gardner?
No.
Do we? Apparently we don't have an answer to that.
Well, the reason I ask is because I like the hearing process, because then, A, people get notified, and B, they can stick up for one another. Maybe it's an occasional thing, and it's not that big a worry. And so I'm concerned about this. Thank you.
I see no one else standing. Oh, I do see someone standing. Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Hi, Maya Minkin, Minuteman Road. I also have concerns about this. I have heard a couple of stories where the dog officer was impatient with an issue with a couple of dogs, and I don't think I know or understand enough about the training that goes into the officer, or how fair or equitable this will be if there's a set of guidelines and laws that, you know, are very clear to Acton citizens following this change. And I think the idea of a hearing, I guess that my question would be, how often do people come before you with offenses? And is this really impeding the dog officer, or are dogs out of control in town? Like, why the change?
Well, I've been on the board a year this time, and we haven't had a dog hearing. But we only meet every other week, so if there's a nuisance dog, the animal control officer can issue the citation. And in some instances, it's a concern for public health and safety.
Okay, I'm sorry. The town manager wants to add to that comment.
The animal control officer has been writing tickets. This is really just to clarify and make sure he's got the authority, because as Ms. Gardner says, you can have a situation with a dog running loose, and depending on the selectman's schedule, wait 2 weeks before you get a vote on issuing a ticket.
Mr. Moderator, if I may.
Counsel?
Just briefly, again, this applies to typically the ticket violations are licensing violations or leash law violations. Those issues that arise with nuisance dogs or dangerous dogs where there's been an incident still come forward for a hearing in front of the selectmen.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Yeah, Franny Osmond, Half Moon Hill. I was going to say, the whole time I was a selectman, I never saw one, so it does sound like the town manager said that it's just a housekeeping thing, because it doesn't, we had nuisance dogs and we had dangerous dogs, but we never, ever saw in those 3 years an off-leash dog or a not licensed dog. So it does sound like just a minor housekeeping change.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2. We need, okay, there we go.
Jan Bramhall, 126 Quarry Road. Originally, I was thinking that this made sense, because if you get a ticket, then you can appeal it if you think there are reasons to do so. But hearing the town council say that the recourse is taking it to district court seems a little extreme to me. One should be able to appeal, have a hearing about any fine in town, whether it's dog-related or not, rather than going directly to a court situation. So I encourage people to vote against this article.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
May I offer an amendment to allow it to be appealable to the Board of Selectmen?
Unfortunately, you cannot make an amendment because this is set by general laws.
Okay, thank you.
See no one else standing. We will vote on the motion. This takes a majority to pass. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. I judge that the motion carries. Article 32, amend the general bylaws, appointment of a tree warden. This also requires a majority vote. Mr. Chang moves that the town adopt the general bylaws amendment as set forth in the article. Do I hear a second? Mr. Chang, you may speak to your motion.
This is a pretty simple housekeeping change. It changes the appointing authority for a tree warden from the Board of Selectmen to the town manager. We've had the same tree warden for quite some time, and in practice this has been something that the town manager has basically handled, so we would like to formalize that.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation on this motion?
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends this article.
Thank you. I'll open it up for debate. See no one standing. We will go ahead and vote. This requires a majority. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion carries. Thank you. We will now move to the non-monetary consent agenda, which are Articles 33 through 40. We will treat this, and it's the same process as we did the financial consent items, so I'll first read the general motion and then go through the articles by name. Ms. Adachi moves that the town take up the 8 articles in the consent agenda on pages 69 through 76 of the warrant, Articles 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, and 40. Do I hear a second? Motion has been made and seconded, so we will go through this consent agenda as we did the other one. If someone wishes to hold the article as I read it, I need to hear 2 holds, then it will be removed from the consent agenda. Those that are not held, we will then vote on those that are still on the consent agenda, and then we will pick up the ones that have been held. So I will read them. Number 33 is amend general bylaws, public way permits. I heard 1 hold. Here, 2 holds. 33 has been held. 34, land acquisition sidewalks. 35, highway reimbursement program, Chapter 90. 36, insurance proceeds. 37, gifts or grants. 38, federal and state reimbursement aid. 39, performance bonds. 40, sale of foreclosed properties. So 1 has been held, which is number 33. So we will now take up the motion to approve the other articles on the consent agenda. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. I declare that the required 2/3 vote has been achieved. We will now turn to what I believe to be the last article of the evening, which is Article 33. And if the person or persons who held it would like to either ask a question or make a comment. Speaker at microphone number 1.
I just have a concern because this is, again, eliminating the hearing process for altering of rights-of-way, fence post, tree, edgeway, all this stuff. And so I feel like we should be getting more in front of our selectmen, more in public view, not less. So I had the same issue with number 40, which I'll speak to now if you'll be so engaged. I didn't hold it, but it's, again, disposing of foreclosed properties.
I'm sorry, we have already disposed of Article 40,
Okay,
so we
thank
can
you.
only speak about Article 33.
Okay, I just have concerns about this, that I feel like a hearing process affords the neighbors and other people to object or hear concerns, for the Board of Selectmen, our leaders, to hear concerns. And so I urge voting no on this. Thank you.
I recognize the speaker approaching microphone number 2.
Danny Factor, 11 Davis Road. So right now, when an entity requires a permit to make changes to the land or the structures in a right-of-way, they have to get permission from the Board of Selectmen at a public meeting. I do have concerns about this change proposed. It would move the decision to town staff. It would basically be moving it to a behind closed door decision. It would take away the public oversight. If anything, we need to be making our process more transparent, not less. So for this reason, I do oppose this change. I think it's better to retain the current process where these decisions are made at open meetings with the opportunity for the public to comment. So I do encourage a vote of no on this item. Thank you.
I see no one else standing or approaching, so we will vote on the motion under Article 33. The motion is that move that the town adopt the general bylaws amendment as set forth in the article, and this requires a majority vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Declare that the motion has failed. Madam Chair, do you wish to make one other motion?
Move to dissolve 2018 annual town meeting.
All those in favor of dissolving the meeting, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Thank you. Meeting is dissolved.